Chapter 331. Instant Shattering of the Illusion. Across the road, the nine-headed Hydra locked eyes with Bai Yu. All nine heads displayed human-like smiles before speaking in Lu Wen's voice, questioning Bai Yu. Yu, why haven't you come to save me yet? Do you know how much pain I'm in? You heartless bastard. You've caused so much suffering to me and my daughter. Boom. Just as the Hydra finished speaking, the heaven-measuring ruler descended from the sky. The massive Hydra was instantly smashed into a pulp. The impact even created a gaping hole in the illusion constructed by the cursed dead zone. Such pathetic tricks are embarrassing. Don't bother showing them off. Bai Yu had no patience for playing illusion games in this fake Jiang city with the cursed dead zone. He tossed out a karma flame lotus, which immediately unleashed boundless karma fire. Fire rained down from the sky. In an instant, the entire city was engulfed in flames. Countless citizens, consumed by the karma fire, released painful wails and venomous curses. Bai Yu, you butcher, you're the one who killed us. Bai Yu, the three realms are suffering because of you. May you die a horrible death. Bai Yu, you scourge, why don't you just die already? A torrent of curses erupted from the burning city, countless vile words swirling around Bai Yu, relentlessly attacking him. The curses grew increasingly malicious, the language increasingly offensive. Even Long Yao's brow furrowed slightly as she said, "This place is a dump of despair. I can't take it anymore." Long Yao couldn't hold back any longer. The white dragon coiled around her leg flew out, transforming into a massive white dragon in the fiery sky above the city. The dragon unleashed torrents of holy light, slamming down upon the city. In a heartbeat, Jiang City was reduced to ashes. The illusion vanished, and the surroundings were once again enveloped in darkness. Long Yao retracted the white dragon, then, with her hands on her hips, looked to Bai Yu for praise. Phew. Finally, it's clean. Master, did I do a good job? I just destroyed the illusion. Bai Yu retrieved the heaven-measuring ruler and the karma flame lotus. Seeing Long Yao's boastful expression, he sighed slightly, shook his head with a smile, and then said, "Do you know why I used karma fire to burn the illusion?" Long Yao was momentarily stunned. "Why?" Bai Yu explained, "My karma fire will not extinguish until it has completely incinerated its target, and the cursed dead zone's illusion is undoubtedly linked to the curses of the cursed dead zone. Burning the illusion with karma fire will eventually ignite the curses of the cursed dead zone. When that happens, with the karma fire spreading, we'll have much less work to do." Hearing Bai Yu's words, Long Yao exclaimed in surprise, "Tian, did I ruin Master's plan?" She had used her white dragon's breath to obliterate the illusion, inadvertently extinguishing the karma fire that Bai Yu was using to burn the city. The plan to burn the curses with the karma fire was now ruined. At this thought, Long Yao's mood turned somber. "Master, I'm sorry. I just thought those vile curses were too awful to bear, so I couldn't help myself." Bai Yu waved his hand. "It's no matter. I didn't like listening to those words either. Erasing it all brings some peace. As for the cursed dead zone, there are many ways to destroy it. There's no rush. You don't need to blame yourself." "Yes." With Bai Yu's consolation, Long Yao's spirits were lifted. "I definitely won't act recklessly again. Master, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do it." Bai Yu chuckled and shook his head. He then looked at the stunned curse and asked, "Curse, now that we've broken through the illusion of the cursed dead zone, how do we delve deeper into it?" Hearing Bai Yu's words, Curse finally snapped out of her daze, staring at Bai Yu in disbelief. You actually broke through the illusion of the cursed dead zone so easily. It's incredible." Curse had lived in the cursed dead zone for a considerable time. She was very aware of how terrifying the cursed dead zone's illusions were. The illusions would slowly bring to life the deepest fears within a person's heart. Even if people knew the illusions were fake, they couldn't resist the encroachment of despair and terror, ultimately becoming playthings of the curse. In Curse's memory, no one had ever been unscathed in the cursed dead zone's illusions. Yet, Bai Yu and Long Yao had broken through the illusion so easily. Just how powerful were these two? Curse stared blankly at Bai Yu and Long Yao, her mind almost ceasing to function. Curse? Seeing Curse was in a daze again, Baiyu gently called out, once again asking, how do we get to the deepest part of the cursed dead zone? Curse quickly came back to her senses and replied, the closer we get to the center of the cursed dead zone, the stronger the curse becomes. We are already on the outer edge of the cursed dead zone. We just need to follow the direction of the strongest curses to get to the deepest part. Although your power far surpasses my expectations, I still must warn you. On the outer edges of the cursed dead zone there are only illusions. But as we delve deeper, we will encounter powerful cursed creatures. The danger of these creatures far surpasses that of the illusions. Be very careful. Yes, I will be careful, Baiyu nodded slightly, then instructed Curse and Long Yao. This cursed dead zone is full of dangers, so I will go in front as scout. Curse, you will stay in the middle, and Long Yao, you will stay in the back. No problem. Long Yao replied instantly. Understood. Curse nodded as well, not rejecting Baiyu's proposal. Curse already realized that Baiyu and Long Yao's strength was above hers. If she stayed between the two of them, she could avoid the majority of the danger and wouldn't be a hindrance to Baiyu and Long Yao. With the vast difference in strength, Curse clearly understood her position. As long as she led the way well, it would be her greatest contribution. After arranging the order of their travel, Baiyu took the lead, immediately heading towards the direction of the strongest curse. Perhaps the cursed dead zone also realized that it had encountered formidable opponents, and it didn't try to trap Baiyu and Long Yao with illusions. Instead, it began to gather a large number of curses in its center. Within the cursed dead zone, filled with despair, a large amount of curses were being pulled together by a special power, condensing into countless malevolent curse symbols in the void. Meanwhile, the cursed spirits living in the cursed dead zone also became active, swimming in the darkness, quietly heading in the direction of Baiyu. Baiyu continued to fly deeper into the cursed dead zone, without encountering any obstacles along the way. It even seemed like the curses viewed them as plagues, constantly moving away, resembling the calm before a storm. However, just when Baiyu believed that everything would be peaceful until they reached the deepest part of the cursed dead zone, Curse, who was originally in the middle, suddenly had a splitting headache, and the curse within her body erupted. Ah! Protected by Baiyu and Long Yao, Curse screamed in pain. Then her eyes filled with endless brutality. Her 5 fingers transformed into claws, striking towards Baiyu's back. Chapter 332. The Mysterious Man in the Darkness. Kill! Curse suddenly lost her rationality, unhesitatingly striking towards Baiyu's back. Her eyes were filled with an infinite amount of brutality. Master, watch out! From behind, Long Yao, seeing Curse suddenly go berserk, her expression changed slightly, and she immediately warned Baiyu. Baiyu had already reacted when the curse inside Curse's body erupted. He turned around and threw the Eastern Emperor Bell, enclosing Curse inside. Kill! Trapped within the Eastern Emperor Bell, Curse not only didn't calm down, she became even more frantic. She struggled, banging her head against the Eastern Emperor Bell, as if she were trying to break it with her head. Long Yao, seeing Curse's frantic state inside the Eastern Emperor Bell, had a worried look in her eyes. She said to Baiyu, Master, if things continue like this, I'm afraid that Curse will have completely lost it before we even reach the center of the cursed dead zone. Baiyu used his spiritual power to restrain the frenzied curse and said gravely, It seems like the consciousness of the cursed dead zone knows that you and I are difficult to deal with, so it is using Curse as a breakthrough point. The curses within Curse's body all come from the cursed dead zone, and even her consciousness is being tainted by the curse. It is all too easy for the cursed dead zone to bypass us and attack Curse. Long Yao asked, Then what should we do now? Should we send Curse outside of the cursed dead zone? That won't work. Baiyu shook his head slightly. If leaving the cursed dead zone could eliminate the effects of the curse, Curse wouldn't have been tortured by the curse all this time. Our only option now is to find a way to remove the curse before the cursed dead zone completely devours Curse. Long Yao, you stay here and protect Curse. Try to find a way to slow down the curse's encroachment. I'll go and explore the center of the cursed dead zone by myself. Long Yao asked, Master, are you sure you can do it alone? You really don't need my help? It's fine. With you protecting Curse, I will actually be more free to act. Baiyu said quickly, then he didn't waste time where he stood. Transforming into a ray of light, he rushed toward the deepest part of the cursed dead zone. Without needing to wait for Curse, Baiyu's speed suddenly increased. He sped through the cursed dead zone, as if there was no one in sight. After seeing Baiyu acting alone, the cursed dead zone felt like this was a good opportunity to defeat them one by one. It immediately mobilized all the power in the cursed dead zone to attack Baiyu. A large number of curse symbols manifested around Baiyu, and countless malicious curses echoed in Baiyu's ears. Even a large number of curse threads appeared out of nowhere, wrapping around Baiyu's limbs, trying to pull him into the abyss of the curse. These tricks might work on some ordinary people, but if you want to stop me from moving forward here, you are dreaming. Baiyu ignored the cursed threads wrapping around him. He summoned the nameless boundless sword and unleashed a sword aura. Wherever the sword aura passed, cursed threads and curse symbols were cut open. The cursed dead zone itself was even sliced open by the sword aura, allowing Baiyu to see the void outside. Baiyu did not stop for even a moment. The entire person pursued the sword aura, heading deeper into the cursed dead zone. In this manner, Baiyu entered the deepest part of the cursed dead zone with overwhelming power. The sword aura from the nameless boundless sword sliced apart numerous curse symbols, tore through the intense despair, yet suddenly disappeared into thin air. Seeing the sword aura he had unleashed vanish into the darkness, Baiyu stopped. Behind him, numerous curse symbols rapidly condensed, and countless cursed beings were flying towards him. Baiyu ignored the curses behind him. Looking at the deep darkness ahead, he faintly felt that danger was hidden within. Not choosing to rush in blindly, Baiyu gripped the nameless boundless sword, and once again unleashed a sword aura forward. However, like before, the sword aura that was enough to cut through all curses vanished into thin air upon contacting the darkness ahead. There is no spatial fluctuation ahead. My sword aura was not transported elsewhere, but swallowed by the darkness ahead. This should be the central area of the cursed dead zone. I still have to be careful, Baiyu muttered to himself. He tried to use his soul force to explore forward, but he discovered that after his soul force expanded to the place where his sword aura vanished, it too disappeared. Baiyu was unable to investigate any further. Afterwards, Baiyu expanded his soul force backwards, penetrating the numerous curses and encompassing Long Yao. Sensing Baiyu's soul force returning, Long Yao asked, "Master, did you encounter any problems?" "Nothing too serious. Has everything been all right on your side?" "Yes, after you acted on your own, the cursed dead zone seemed to have concentrated all its power to deal with you. Curse, on the other hand, calmed down and is currently sleeping inside Master's Eastern Emperor Bell. It's good that things are all right on your side." After learning about the situations of Long Yao and Curse, Baiyu continued to expand his soul force, wanting to cover the entirety of the cursed dead zone with his soul force. As Baiyu's soul force covered the entire cursed dead zone, he discovered that the cursed dead zone was like a black donut, its outer edge filled with endless curses, while the center was a pitch-black void, empty of anything. Baiyu's soul force was able to investigate every spot on the outer edges of the cursed dead zone. He was able to easily erase every curse on the outer edge of the cursed dead zone. However, once Baiyu's soul force tried to enter the center of the cursed dead zone, it would be swallowed by the darkness. It seems that if I want to know what exactly is in the center of this cursed dead zone, I will have to go and see for myself. Seeing that he was unable to observe the situation in the center of the cursed dead zone using his soul force, Baiyu stopped wasting any more time and directly flew towards the darkness ahead. "Outsider, you are forbidden to proceed. Please go back." At that moment, a strange voice echoed in Baiyu's ears. Immediately after, Baiyu felt an incredibly strong force transmitted from the darkness ahead, blocking his path. "Who are you?" Baiyu stopped and asked. The mysterious voice said calmly, "Who I am is not important. What's important is that you still have a chance to turn back. If you turn back, I may consider sending you out of the cursed dead zone." Baiyu replied, "I am unable to comply. A friend of mine is deeply afflicted by the curse of the cursed dead zone. I must enter the center of the cursed dead zone to find a way to remove the curse. The mysterious voice continued, once one is consumed by the cursed dead zone, there is no way to save them. All that awaits them is destruction. If you continue forward, it will not change your friend's fate and will only put yourself in danger. Do not be so stubborn. Please go back. Baiyu said with a serious tone. What if I said that I will continue forward regardless? Sigh. There are too many people like you in this world, unwilling to turn back until they've hit a wall. Very well. If you must continue forward, then don't blame me for being merciless. As soon as the voice finished speaking, the darkness in front of Baiyu twisted slightly. Then, a handsome man, half naked, black chains wrapped around his waist and arms, with a pale face and hair like a waterfall of darkness, slowly walked out of the darkness. He calmly looked at Baiyu. If you persist in your foolish actions, then to prevent any further tragedies from occurring, I will only be able to kill you before you fall into despair. Chapter 333. The Center of the Cursed Dead Zone. Baiyu sized up the mysterious man who had emerged from the darkness and said, You don't seem to be the consciousness of the cursed dead zone. Why are you blocking me here? The mysterious man's eyes were as deep as the starry sky. He looked calmly at Baiyu and said in a completely emotionless tone, I am nothing more than a wandering, lonely ghost in the cursed dead zone. Outsider, I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to leave or not? Hearing the mysterious man's question, Baiyu merely smiled. He twirled the nameless, boundless sword in a flourish and pointed it at the mysterious man, saying, I've already said that. No matter what happens, I have to go and see for myself. If you move aside now, you can still save your life. You are no match for me. Hearing Baiyu's words, the mysterious man sighed slightly, and dark energy gradually began to emanate from his hands. Ignorant and arrogant human. Very well, then I shall end your life here. As the mysterious man's voice fell, a sharp glint flashed in his eyes, and he vanished from his spot. The next moment, the mysterious man appeared in front of Baiyu, a cruel smile on his face. His 5 fingers formed into claws as he abruptly reached towards Baiyu. Die! The mysterious man roared, curse symbols manifesting all over his body, releasing a terrifying aura. Seeing the mysterious man attack, Baiyu didn't plan to dodge. Instead, he lifted his sword in an upward thrust. Clang! The nameless, boundless sword collided with the mysterious man's palm, emitting a sound of clashing metal. The violent force radiated outwards, instantly shattering countless curses in the cursed dead zone. Even Long Yao, waiting far away, sensed the powerful energy fluctuation. She looked towards the center of the cursed dead zone in shock and exclaimed, Master and the curse worm's auras. Is Master already fighting the curse worm? In the central area of the cursed dead zone, after the curse worm exchanged blows with Baiyu, a slight flicker finally appeared in his deep eyes. Outsider, you are strong. The curse worm's tone finally changed. He said this quickly. Then the chains wrapped around his arm seemed to come alive, quickly wrapping around the nameless, boundless sword. A large amount of dark energy flowed out of the chains, covering the nameless, boundless sword, and dyeing it completely black. Numerous curse symbols appeared on the nameless, boundless sword, and the sword began to wail. The connection between Baiyu and the nameless, boundless sword was rapidly weakening. Baiyu felt that his nameless, boundless sword was being corroded by a mysterious curse. He couldn't help but chuckle and say to the curse worm, Do you think that by controlling my nameless, boundless sword, you can gain the upper hand? I have many divine weapons like the nameless, boundless sword. As soon as Baiyu's voice fell, the heaven-measuring ruler instantly materialized behind him, emanating an incredibly terrifying power. Boom! The might of the heaven-measuring ruler unleashed itself on the curse worm. The curse worm, who was still trying to seize Baiyu's nameless, boundless sword, had his pupils shrink abruptly upon seeing the heaven-measuring ruler appear behind Baiyu. Bang! Before the curse worm could react, the heaven-measuring ruler slammed into the curse worm's abdomen. The curse worm was sent flying like a cannonball, crashing heavily into the darkness, disappearing from sight. Baiyu retrieved the heaven-measuring ruler and pulled the chains off the nameless boundless sword. He discovered that the chains contained many curses that were different from the cursed dead zones. And after Baiyu held the cursed chains, the curses and the cursed creatures that were lurking behind Baiyu all fled as if they had encountered a plague. They no longer dared to approach Baiyu. This thing actually has the effect of dispelling the cursed dead zone. Could that guy just now have been the curse worm? Seeing the curses behind him all run away, Baiyu had some speculation about the curse worm's identity. If that guy is the curse worm, then this thing should be able to be of use in the cursed dead zone. Baiyu sensed the large amount of curses within the chains. Instead of discarding the cursed chains, he directly wrapped them around his arm. Numerous curse symbols appeared on Baiyu's arm. However, under the suppression of Baiyu's spiritual power, the curse symbols could only manifest on Baiyu's arm and could not penetrate deeper into his body. After using the cursed chains as a mosquito repellent, Baiyu no longer hesitated and flew straight into the darkness ahead, disappearing into it. The moment Baiyu made contact with the darkness, he felt as if he had entered the icy depths of the sea. A very uncomfortable feeling enveloped his entire body. The curse was like a liquid, slowly flowing around Baiyu, silently eroding his skin. Everything was pitch black and utterly silent. Staying here for a long time would probably drive anyone mad. Here, soul force is useless. Everything can only be observed with the naked eye. I have to be careful. Baiyu scanned his surroundings and discovered that his soul force had completely stopped working, and his eyes could only see things within a 10-meter radius. After adapting a bit to the surroundings, Baiyu stood in the darkness and gently moved the curses around him. It felt like he was moving water. He said curiously, "All of the curses here have turned into something like water? This is truly amazing. You still came in." At this moment, the curse worm's voice sounded again. Baiyu looked in the direction of the voice and saw the curse worm staring intently at him from a distance of less than 10 meters. The curse worm looked quite displeased. There is only endless curse and despair here. There is no way to remove curses. You came here to seek your own death. Baiyu laughed. I'm the type of person who, if I don't see it with my own eyes, I won't believe it. But since I'm already here, you shouldn't have any reason to attack me anymore, right? The curse worm regained his composure and said to Baiyu, "Humph, I have no interest in fighting with a dead man. You will soon pay the price for your foolish actions. You will understand then that death is a happiness that you cannot even hope for." After saying this, the curse worm no longer paid attention to Baiyu. Instead, he retreated, disappearing from Baiyu's sight. Baiyu did not chase after the curse worm. Instead, he closed his eyes and quietly sensed the curses flowing around him. Even though this place blocked Baiyu's perception and the surroundings were pitch black, making it impossible for Baiyu to discern directions, the curses flowing around him had certain strengths and weaknesses. The direction of the strongest curses must be the direction of the center of the cursed dead zone. Baiyu carefully sensed everything around him and soon detected the location where the curses were the strongest. Found it, that direction should lead to the center of the cursed dead zone. Baiyu opened his eyes. Once he had discovered the location of the center of the cursed dead zone, he no longer hesitated and immediately flew towards the center of the cursed dead zone. A dark streak of light huagua the center of the cursed dead zone. Even though Baiyu couldn't clearly sense directions or see any dangers ahead, he was still flying rapidly through the center of the cursed dead zone. Soon, Baiyu arrived at the very center of the cursed dead zone and saw a giant beast sleeping in the darkness. Chapter 334. The Curse God. That giant beast should be the source of the curse in the cursed dead zone. Baiyu stood in the dense darkness and looked at the sleeping giant beast in front of him. He immediately recalled what Sugu had told him when he first introduced the cursed dead zone. He mentioned that deep inside the cursed dead zone, there was a ferocious beast formed from the condensation of curses. Baiyu was now sensing extremely evil curse fluctuations from the sleeping giant beast. Almost all negative emotions in the world could be felt from that giant beast. Even Baiyu, who had prepared himself, was infected by the negative emotions from the beast. His mood became a bit irritable, and he had the urge to destroy everything he saw. Even the cursed chains wrapped around his arm were trembling slightly. It wasn't clear whether it was guarding against the beast or was just scared. This beast is definitely not simple. It seems the curse worm didn't warn me for no reason. Bayu silently recited a mantra that helped him calm down. He then gripped the nameless, boundless sword and flew towards the sleeping giant beast in the darkness. Bayu had come here to help Curse remove the curses of the cursed dead zone. That giant beast was his target. No matter how dangerous it was, he had to go. Huff! As Bayu got closer to the beast, he gradually heard the beast's snoring. But unlike normal snoring, the beast's snoring carried an extremely powerful curse. If Bayu had not used his spiritual power to protect himself, he would have been cursed simply by hearing it. This guy is covered in curses. Bayu came to the side of the giant beast through its snoring. He raised the nameless, boundless sword, wanting to seize the opportunity of the beast being asleep to kill it. Stop! However, just as Bayu was about to strike, Curse's voice echoed in Bayu's ear, stopping Bayu's actions. The curse worm appeared not far away, his face looking grim as he stared at Bayu. He said in a grave voice, "I didn't want to stop you if you were seeking death. But what you are doing now is going to make sure no one can live. I must stop you." Hearing the curse worm's words, Bayu put the nameless, boundless sword away and asked the curse worm, "Then tell me first, what will be the consequences of killing this giant beast?" The curse worm said gravely, "You can't kill it. You will only wake it up from its slumber. When that happens, everything in the cursed dead zone will be destroyed." Bayu raised his eyebrows slightly. Why? The curse worm knew he could no longer hide anything. He sighed slightly and said, "This beast is called the curse god. It is a curse aggregate formed from all my evil thoughts and negative emotions. It possesses all my powers, and could even replace me to become the new curse worm." "So, you are the 17th ranked innate celestial spirit, the curse worm?" Bayu asked with raised eyebrows. Although he already had speculations about the curse worm's identity, this was the moment he truly confirmed it. The curse worm said, "It seems you have a certain understanding of my existence." "That's right, I am the 17th ranked innate celestial spirit, the curse worm." Bayu said, "But even if you are the curse worm, what does that have to do with me killing that giant beast?" The curse worm said, "The curse god possesses all of my powers. You can say that it is the source of all curses. As long as there are still curses in the world, it will not die. And the cursed dead zone, which makes countless people turn pale with fear, is actually a world that was materialized by the curse god's dream. Everyone in the cursed dead zone is like living in the curse god's dream. We have all become people in the curse god's dream. Once you awaken the curse god, the dream will shatter, the cursed dead zone will disappear, and you and I will all turn into ephemeral bubbles, disappearing in the end." Bayu was amazed. "There's such a thing? Then the curse god's power is too powerful." The curse worm continued, "Since you know about innate celestial spirits, then you should know that every innate celestial spirit possesses incredible power. As the 17th ranked high-level innate celestial spirit, my power is enough to affect the balance of the void. And the current curse god is the manifestation of my power. This is not strange." Bayu continued to ask, "Then is there no way to get rid of this cursed beast?" In fact, in Bayu's heart, the words that the curse worm said didn't cause any psychological changes in Bayu. With Long Yao, who was ranked 4th, Bayu couldn't even comprehend how terrifying a high-level innate celestial spirit was. Hearing Bayu's question, the curse worm sighed heavily and said, "I wasted my time explaining this to you. I thought you would retreat, but I never imagined that you still don't understand anything. The curse god is immortal and indestructible. Once it awakens, its dream will disappear, and all life in the cursed dead zone will die." Bayu, "Then why don't you just regain the curse god's power and make sure it can never awaken? That way I would save myself some trouble, and everyone would be happy." The curse worm said, "You have no idea what you are talking about. If I could truly regain my power, then the cursed dead zone wouldn't even exist anymore. Then what if I said that I have the ability to help you?" Bayu laughed. The curse worm shook his head and said, "Don't waste your effort. Even if your power is above mine, that doesn't mean you can defeat the curse god's curse. The reason you haven't been targeted by the curse god's curse is because of the curse chains wrapped around your arm. The chains are shielding the curse god's perception, making it impossible for the curse god to identify you. Without those chains, it would have been impossible for you to get here. Is that so? Baiyu looked at the curse worm, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He said, "Let's make a bet. How about it? What are we betting on?" The curse worm asked, frowning. Baiyu laughed and said, "I'll give you back your cursed chains. If the curses here cannot harm me, then you will acknowledge me as your master. How about it?" The curse worm asked, "And what if the curse god's curse can harm you? Then I would definitely die in here. You also wouldn't have to worry about me waking up the curse god. That should be a good thing for you, right?" Hearing Baiyu's words, the curse worm hesitated for a moment and then replied, "Okay, I can bet with you. But there's one thing I have to remind you. Even if you do have a way to resist the curse god's curse, all of my power is with the curse god. Even if I acknowledge you as my master, you won't get any benefits. Even so, you still want to bet?" Baiyu laughed. "Bet. As long as I win, how to deal with the curse god is my business. If you are sure, then let's start." With that, Baiyu tore off the cursed chains on his arm and threw them at the curse worm. Boom. The previously calm curses around them suddenly became wild and rushed towards Baiyu. Chapter 335. I am the wielder of the ancestral dragon spirit. As Baiyu removed the curse worm's cursed chains, the surrounding curses, which were previously as calm as water, suddenly became incredibly terrifying. Vast quantities of curses, hundreds of times stronger than those on the outer edges of the cursed dead zone, poured down onto Baiyu, attempting to completely devour him. Almost instantly, countless curse symbols appeared all over Baiyu's body, making him look like he was completely made out of curses. Numerous curses burrowed into Baiyu's skin, attempting to erode his soul. The curse worm, grasping the cursed chains that Baiyu had thrown at him, watched Baiyu as he was enveloped in curse symbols. Pity filled his eyes as he sighed, "Ignorant and foolishly arrogant person, I've warned you many times. Now that you have come to this end, it is only your own fault and no one else's. From now on, you can slowly regret your choices today in despair and pain." After seeing Baiyu surrounded by curses, the curse worm knew that there was no hope for Baiyu. He knew very well what the consequences of being surrounded by the curse god's curses were. He had seen too many of these scenes before. A major reason why the curse god's curses were so terrifying was because they ignored cultivation realms. No matter how strong the person being cursed was, as soon as they were engulfed by the curse god's curses, they would only face death. However, just as the curse worm thought that Baiyu would become a cursed being and was about to leave, he suddenly heard a loud dragon roar coming from Baiyu's body. Following that, he sensed an extremely holy power surging from Baiyu's body. What is this? Upon hearing the dragon roar, the curse worm's expression changed slightly. He immediately looked at Baiyu, who was surrounded by curses, and saw a white dragon fly out of Baiyu's body. Its dazzling light instantly illuminated the surrounding darkness, and the rampant curses quickly dissipated. Such power! The curse worm looked at the white dragon that had flown out of Baiyu's body with disbelief, his voice trembling as he said, "Is that an innate celestial spirit? You possess an innate celestial spirit?" The curse worm asked, staring wide-eyed at Baiyu, in shock. He had never imagined that Baiyu was the possessor of an innate celestial spirit. Protected by the white dragon, all the curse symbols on Baiyu's body vanished. He looked at the bewildered curse worm and chuckled. "That's right. I have an innate celestial spirit, and she just so happens to be able to suppress all your curses." "Curse worm, you lost?" "Impossible. I am a high-level innate celestial spirit rank 17th. Even if you also possess an innate celestial spirit, even if your innate celestial spirit is ranked similarly to me, it's impossible to destroy my curses so easily." The curse worm had never imagined that he would lose. His mind was in a state of chaos, and he had almost stopped thinking. The light radiating from the white dragon protecting Baiyu was getting brighter and brighter, and the darkness that was able to swallow everything in the center of the cursed dead zone was also rapidly disappearing. The power of the cursed dead zone was rapidly weakening, and the sleeping curse god was now showing signs of pain and was about to awaken. Seeing that the curse god was about to wake up, the curse worm no longer bothered to be shocked by Bayu's power. He immediately said to Bayu, "I admit defeat. First, stop your innate celestial spirit's power. Don't let the curse god wake up." Bayu didn't want to let the curse worm disappear before he had subjugated him. He also withdrew Long Yao's power. The white dragon disappeared, and the surroundings returned to darkness. As the white dragon disappeared, the pain on the curse god's face faded. It fell back into slumber, and the power of the cursed dead zone was restored. Seeing how his surroundings changed because of the curse god's slumber, Bayu mumbled, "It really does seem like the curse worm said. This cursed dead zone is the curse god's dream. After subduing the curse worm, perhaps I can develop my power in this area as well." After seeing the surroundings return to normal, the curse worm finally let out a sigh of relief. He then looked at Bayu angrily and said, "You have an innate celestial spirit, but you still had to make a bet with me. You deliberately wanted to make a fool out of me, didn't you?" Bayu asked, puzzled. "How did I make a fool out of you? We both agreed on the content and stakes of the bet, didn't we?" The curse worm said, "A person can only possess one innate celestial spirit. You already have one, yet you still want me to recognize you as your master? What else is that besides you making a fool out of me?" Bayu laughed and said, "Who told you that a person could only have one innate celestial spirit?" The curse worm said angrily, "I am an innate celestial spirit myself. Do you think I wouldn't know? If you want me to acknowledge you as my master, then first, get rid of the innate celestial spirit that you have. Otherwise, don't blame me for breaking our agreement. It's your fault to begin with." Looking at the curse worm's angry expression, Bayu chuckled. "It seems like I forgot to introduce myself, causing you to misunderstand something. Before you acknowledge me as your master, let me first formally introduce myself. My name is Bayu, and I am the wielder of the ancestral dragon spirit, the fourth-ranked innate celestial spirit." The fourth-ranked ancestral dragon spirit? The curse worm's soul jolted violently. Upon hearing Bayu's words, a huge wave was stirred up in his heart, and his face was filled with disbelief. He knew that in the void, every innate celestial spirit was a unique existence, possessing immense power. The curse worm, as the 17th ranked innate celestial spirit, was already ranked quite high. It was enough for him to roam freely through the void. Innate celestial spirits ranked in the top 10 were definitely more terrifying. Each one of them could look down on the heroes of the void. It was an unknown whether there were any innate celestial spirits ranked in the top 10 in the void nowadays. Now, all of a sudden, there was a person who was the master of a fourth-ranked innate celestial spirit. The curse worm's mind went blank. He looked at Bayu's face and stopped thinking completely. This was the first time he had ever met an innate celestial spirit ranked in the top 10. For a moment, the curse worm lost the desire to fight. He no longer wanted to be enemies with Bayu. After a long time, the curse worm finally regained his senses and accepted reality. He pursed his lips and asked Bayu, "Since you possess the ancestral dragon spirit, why do you still want to target me? With the ancestral dragon spirit, it's impossible for you to give up that powerful innate celestial spirit and have me acknowledge you as your master, right?" Bayu laughed and said, "Of course I wouldn't give up my innate celestial spirit, but I still want you to acknowledge me as my master." The curse worm was taken aback. But a person can only have one innate celestial spirit. How are you going to break that rule? At this moment, the curse worm no longer doubted that Bayu was boasting. After all, a wielder of the ancestral dragon spirit would not be ignorant of the characteristics of innate celestial spirits. Since Bayu said it, he must have a way. Bayu said, "The characteristic of the ancestral dragon spirit is that it allows me to possess multiple innate celestial spirits. So, as long as you are willing to acknowledge me as your master, I can take you in and acquire your powers. So, curse worm, you must accept defeat. You should fulfill the bet." Chapter 336, Pouring Chicken Soup. Fulfill the bet? Upon hearing Bayu's words, the curse worm knew that he had no choice. He sighed deeply and said, I understand. If you can truly possess two or more innate celestial spirits at the same time, then I will acknowledge you as my master. But before that, you still need to help me solve the problem with the curse god. Otherwise, even if I want to acknowledge you as my master, I won't be able to. Baiyu laughed. Don't worry. I came here this time to resolve the cursed dead zone problem. That curse god is in my hands. The curse worm asked, what are you planning to do? This cursed dead zone is the curse god's dream. All of us who are in the cursed dead zone are considered to be dream beings of the curse god. The curse god is immortal and indestructible. Moreover, once it wakes up, the cursed dead zone and all living beings in the cursed dead zone will be destroyed. This is simply an unsolvable problem. Baiyu said, there is no such thing as truly immortal and indestructible in this world. If you can't kill it, it only means that the power isn't strong enough. Long Yao, Baiyu shouted. Then the curse worm heard a dragon roar from the distance. Following that, he saw a young girl with a large golden bell, sitting on a white dragon's head, breaking through the darkness and flying towards them. At this moment, Long Yao was radiating an incredibly terrifying aura. The curse worm instinctively wanted to submit the moment he saw Long Yao. What a beautiful figure! Is this the power of the ancestral dragon spirit? The curse worm murmured, completely entranced. Master, what are your orders? Long Yao used her spiritual power to protect curse inside the Eastern Emperor Bell. She jumped off the dragon's head and landed gracefully in front of Baiyu, smiling cheerfully. Baiyu explained the situations of the curse worm and the curse god to Long Yao and asked, we are now in the curse god's dream. Is there a way to get rid of the curse god? Long Yao laughed and said, Master, this situation is actually very simple. The curse god, in essence, is just a power aggregate formed from the curse worm's negative emotions. It's similar to what humans call their inner demons. The main reason why the curse worm is trapped in the cursed dead zone and allowed the curse god to gain the upper hand is that the curse worm has always placed himself in a weaker position. He has allowed the curse god to seize his power. This has led to the current situation. As long as the curse worm strengthens himself and regains most of his power, the curse god will disappear by itself. The curse worm came back to his senses and said, what you said is easy. If I could regain my power, I would have done it a long time ago. Why would I wait until now? The curse god has already gained momentum. I am just barely maintaining my consciousness at this point. Long Yao looked at the curse worm and patted the curse worm's shoulder earnestly and said, Curse worm, you're just too insecure. You're a dignified 17th ranked innate celestial spirit, the source of curses. How can you say that you can't do it? You need to buck up. With Master and I supporting you, not to mention one curse god, even if 10 of them came, you would still win. The curse worm was stunned by Long Yao's words, and he didn't know what to say. He stood there blankly. Long Yao continued to pump up the curse worm, saying, you need to believe in yourself. The curse god is just another version of you. As long as you defeat yourself, you can embrace a new future. Can I really defeat the curse god? The curse worm asked, dazed. He had been persuaded by Long Yao. Long Yao laughed. As long as you believe in yourself, you will definitely be able to do it. Go for it. The curse worm asked, then I'll go now? Go ahead. With Master and I backing you up, as long as you have confidence, you'll definitely be okay. Okay, I'll go all out. The curse worm, after having a huge bowl of chicken soup poured into him by Long Yao, gritted his teeth and went all out. He flew towards the sleeping curse god. Watching the curse worm's back, Baiyu asked Long Yao, I didn't expect that you were also good at this. However, is the curse worm really going to be able to defeat the curse god? Of course not. Long Yao denied the curse worm without even thinking. Most of the curse worm's power is currently with the curse god. Now that the curse god has become the main personality, the curse worm is a secondary personality that could be killed at any moment. If the two of them clash, even if they fought 100 or 1,000 times, the curse god would still win. Baiyu laughed. Then why did you let the curse worm go head-to-head? Aren't you pushing him into a fire pit? If we didn't let the curse worm awaken the curse god, how would we subdue the curse worm's power? Long Yao smiled slyly at Bai Yu. Master, the moment the curse god awakens and the cursed dead zone collapses, I'll use my divine power to restrain the curse worm and the curse god. At that point, it will be up to you whether you want to keep the consciousness of the curse worm or the curse god. Bai Yu raised his eyebrows. I actually have a choice? Long Yao said, Of course you have a choice. The curse worm and the curse god are only the same innate celestial spirit. What we need is the power of the curse worm. As for which personality's consciousness we keep, it will be up to you. Hearing Long Yao's words, Bai Yu shook his head with a smile and sighed. If the curse worm heard what you just said, he probably wouldn't acknowledge us as his masters, even if he were to die. Long Yao asked, Master, do you think that my methods are a bit despicable? Of course not. In order to achieve a goal, it's okay to use some methods appropriately. Moreover, the curse worm's fate is already in our hands. He has no choice. Hee. I'm relieved then. Boom. While Bai Yu and Long Yao were talking, the curse worm also began fighting for the power of the curse god. The curse god sensed that its power was being seized. It instantly woke up from its slumber. The huge cursed dead zone rapidly collapsed. Countless curses disappeared. The creatures that had been devoured by the cursed dead zone, including curse, were also disappearing at a visible rate. However, on the faces of the disappearing creatures, Bai Yu could not see any pain. On the contrary, their expressions were as if they were finally being released. Being trapped by the cursed dead zone meant they could only be caught in endless despair, making it difficult to even die. But now, with the collapse of the cursed dead zone, the living beings finally welcomed a long-awaited death. Bai Yu. Inside the Eastern Emperor Bell, Curse woke up. She discovered that her body was constantly disappearing. She looked at Bai Yu gratefully and said, Thank you. I am finally… Bai Yu interrupted. Your life is not over yet. Don't give up so quickly. I still have a promise to you that hasn't been fulfilled. After Bai Yu finished speaking, Long Yao used her power to protect Curse, preventing her from dissipating. She then said to Bai Yu, Master, saving the damsel in distress. I'll leave that to you. Understood. Bai Yu nodded slightly, then looked towards the curse god that had already awoken. The curse god was holding the curse worm in its giant claw. Bai Yu's eyes gradually turned cold. It won't live much longer. Chapter 337. Wanting to live. At the very center of the cursed dead zone. After waking the curse god, the curse worm immediately regretted it. He had wrongly trusted Long Yao's chicken soup and believed that as long as he believed in himself, he would definitely be able to regain his power from the curse god. But the truth was, after the curse worm had awakened the curse god realized that its main personality was not yet dead. It immediately attacked, wanting to completely erase the curse worm. And the curse worm, who had lost most of his power, was now like an egg trying to crack a rock when facing the curse god. He would shatter on impact. He was no match for the curse god at all. Curse worm, you cowardly bastard. You're still not dead. The curse god's body surged with an incredibly terrifying aura of curses. It stared at the curse worm in its claw. Just its voice was enough to almost shatter the curse worm's form. The curse worm struggled in the curse god's claws, but his power was too weak compared to the curse god, who possessed countless curses. The curse worm had no way to resist, and could only watch helplessly as his consciousness was slowly erased by the curse god's curses. Suppress. Just when the curse worm thought that he had been tricked by Long Yao and Bai Yu and was about to die, a sharp shout from Bai Yu came from above. Immediately after, the curse worm felt an incredibly strong force descend. Boom! A dazzling white light bloomed at the center of the collapsing cursed dead zone. The surrounding darkness was dispelled by the light, and both the curse worm and the curse god were enveloped in the white light, and the curses around them rapidly dissipated. The curse god sensed an unprecedented threat from Bai Yu. It immediately released the curse worm, preparing to take Bai Yu down first. But before the curse god could move, countless white chains shot out from the dazzling white light, wrapping around the curse worm and the curse god. The curse worm was sealed by the chains in an instant, unable to struggle any further. The curse god was still able to struggle a bit. It continuously broke the chains. However, no matter how many chains it broke, more chains would fly out of the white light, tightly binding it. Large amounts of light continuously eroded the curse god's curse, making the curse god's aura weaker and weaker. Finally, it was completely unable to move and was thoroughly suppressed by Baiyu. As the white light dissipated, Baiyu descended from the sky and landed in front of the curse worm and the curse god. The suppressed curse worm immediately looked at Baiyu and hurriedly asked, "What exactly is going on here? Didn't you say you were going to help me?" Baiyu smiled at the curse worm and said, "Don't be so anxious. Isn't the curse god suppressed now? Next, it's time to complete the master recognition ritual. After the master recognition, you will naturally regain your freedom." Master recognition ritual? Hearing Baiyu's words, the curse god immediately glared at the curse worm and roared, "Curse worm, what exactly did you do? Why are you acknowledging a mere human as your master? Have you forgotten your pride as an innate celestial spirit?" Facing the curse god's question, the curse worm also glared at the curse god and said, "I am the true innate celestial spirit. It's my freedom to acknowledge whoever I want as my master. It's not your turn to teach me. You spineless creature." The curse god struggled constantly. At the same time, it roared at the curse worm, "Back then, it was I who saved you from danger. You thought that you were unable to control your curse, so you willingly gave me your power. And now, you regret it and want to sell me to a mere human? I do regret it. I gave you my power, and instead of being grateful, you wanted to erase me. You ungrateful bastard. You've done these things, and you still dare to question me?" The curse god angrily said, "There can only be one of each innate celestial spirit in the void. You created me, and then gave me your power, which means that you wanted me to continue living under your identity. Curse worm, isn't it clear to you that we can only have one of us left?" The curse worm said, "I just don't want to die. Is there something wrong with that?" Baiyu, who was listening to the argument between the curse worm and the curse god, couldn't help but ask the curse worm, "So you're telling me that you ended up in this situation because you voluntarily gave up your power?" Hearing Baiyu's words, the curse worm no longer hid anything. He sighed, "That's right. Back then, I had just been born in the void, and my power was incredibly weak. In addition, I was inherently weak and couldn't control my curse aura. It often attracted people who coveted my power. Since I had no ability to protect myself, I created the consciousness of the curse god. The curse god was much more powerful than me. It could perfectly control all the curses, and it could kill all those who coveted my power. Over time, I thought that the curse god was more suitable to be the innate celestial spirit than me. I gradually gave up my dominant position and gave all my power to the curse god. At first, I thought that I could coexist with the curse god like I had previously coexisted with the power I controlled, but I soon realized that the curse god and I were both 17th ranked innate celestial spirits, and that we simply could not coexist. One of us had to die. I wanted to regain my power, but the curse god, who had gained my power, did not want to die. It attacked me first, wanting to kill me. I resisted with all my might, and finally managed to fake my death. The curse god thought it had won, but because I was still alive, its power continued to weaken, and it eventually fell into slumber. This eventually led to the situation we are in now. The curse god, who was next to him, then said, "Curse worm, you have no ability to survive. Even if I return your power, you will only become someone else's slave in the void. If you lived such a humiliating life, you might as well have me control all the curses and become the supreme being. Curse worm, it's still not too late to give up all your power. As long as I control all the curses, that guy will never be able to trap me. I'll still be free." After hearing the curse god's words, Baiyu looked at the curse worm and said, "The curse god is right. You still have a choice. After acknowledging me as your master, although you'll be able to live, you'll lose your freedom, and you'll only be used by me. Or you can give up your power and let the curse god, with your will, fight for freedom." The curse worm looked at Baiyu, then at the curse god. He then gritted his teeth and said, "I just want to live. Is there something wrong with that?" Bai laughed. Of course there isn't. Everyone has their own way of living. Both you and the cursed god's choices are not wrong. But from my point of view, the cursed dead zone created by the cursed god has caused endless tragedies. Even if you give up your power, it won't be able to live. So, are you going to give up your power and let the cursed god die heroically? Or are you going to choose to fulfill the bet and acknowledge me as your master? The cursed worm was silent for a moment, then his eyes became firm. He looked up at Bai. I want to live. Chapter 338. A person. Curse worm. Say that again? After hearing the curse worm's words, the curse god roared, Right now, all your power is mine. I am the innate celestial spirit. You have no right to decide who my master is. I am the source of curses. I am the sole existence. No one is worthy to be my master. The curse god roared ferociously, gradually losing its sanity. It actually began to burn its power to break through Bai's seal, trying to grasp onto the last glimmer of hope. However, Bai's seal was a divine power that the ancestral dragon spirit specially used to restrain innate celestial spirits, and Long Yao's power was also far above the curse gods. Now, no matter how the curse god struggled, it was just wasting its power without accomplishing anything. Bai looked at the curse god, which was tenaciously trying to break free from the seal, and said calmly, Although your spirit of striving with all your might for freedom is admirable, your existence is a mistake. So, you should die with your cursed dead zone. Bai had no pity for the curse god. He directly activated his divine power, erasing the curse god's consciousness. As Bai's powerful force crushed down, the curse god didn't even have time to let out a final roar of unwillingness. Its consciousness completely vanished, leaving behind a large mass of unowned curses, wildly crashing against Bai's seal. The curse god's curses were unwilling to be trapped even after the curse god's consciousness was erased. The curse worm, who was on the side, watched as the curse god was erased by Bai. His spirit also became a bit dazed. Before this, he had desperately hoped for the curse god to die, so that he could regain his power and become a true 17th-ranked innate celestial spirit. But when he saw the curse god being erased by Bai, he felt an endless amount of sadness. After all, the curse god was created by him. The curse god had also protected him when he was weak. Now that the curse god was dead, he had the feeling of losing a close ally. Bai, on the other hand, had no psychological fluctuations at this moment. To him, neither the curse worm nor the curse god were trustworthy. Moreover, even if the creation of the cursed dead zone was not the curse worm's intention, the numerous tragedies caused by the cursed dead zone were inseparable from the curse worm. The cursed dead zone alone was enough to ensure that Bai would not trust the curse worm. Of course, if the curse worm were to change in the future, Bai's view of the curse worm would naturally change as well. Curse worm, go and take back your own power. Then we can begin the master recognition ritual. Bai released his suppression on the curse worm and said calmly. The curse worm came back to his senses. He looked at the large mass of curses on the other side, sighed slightly, and then transformed into a ray of light, diving into the curses. As the curse worm's consciousness took over the curses left behind by the curse god, the curses rapidly contracted, gradually condensing into the form of the curse worm. On the other side, Long Yao, who had been protecting Curse, also came over. She glanced at the curse worm, who was currently being condensed into human form, and then said to Bai, Master, why did you leave the curse worm's consciousness behind? Compared to the curse worm, isn't the curse god stronger? Bai said, that would be the case if we used the curse worm's power as a tool, but I still have some hope for the curse worm. His potential is far higher than the curse gods. How is it higher? Long Yao asked curiously. The curse worm is weak and also very conflicted. He cannot control the domineering and sinister power of curses at all. If Master accepts him, I am afraid we will still have to spend our energy to control his curse power. You're also right, but what I value is precisely his weak and conflicted personality. Bai laughed. Long Yao was stunned. Huh? Why? Bai continued. It is that weakness and conflict that gives the curse worm a touch of humanity. and it is that touch of humanity that will give him unlimited room for growth. Long Yao shook her head. I still don't understand. How can weakness and conflict give him unlimited room for growth? Bai Yu replied, you are an innate celestial spirit, born with immense power. It is normal for you to be unable to understand the conflicts of humanity. I was once an innate demon god. When I had not yet been reincarnated as a human, I was also unable to understand how fragile humans were able to survive in this cruel world. I also didn't understand why the strongest innate demon god of the time, Pango, would sacrifice his life to create the heavens and earth and the three realms for the human race to proliferate. But I later understood that the world is fair. Although humans are weak, they possess unlimited potential. Take a look at you and the curse worm now. Although you are not human, aren't you using a human form? Long Yao instinctively wanted to refute Bai Yu, but she didn't know what to say. Indeed, she was the ancestral dragon spirit. Her main body was a dragon, but she had become accustomed to using a human form. In fact, she herself wasn't sure why, but she just felt that the human form was more convenient to do everything in. Bai Yu smiled at Long Yao and said, perhaps you haven't realized it yourself, but in every aspect, you're becoming more and more like humans. No, you can already be considered a real person. Although Bai Yu hadn't lived as long as Long Yao, Bai Yu, as an innate demon god who later reincarnated as a human and lived with humans, understood the innate beings in humans more than anyone else. Even though he had received blessings from the original chaos, had become the 8th original king, and one of the 7 pillars of the Watchers, he still believed that only with humanity could one continuously grow. I'm considered a real person now? After hearing Bai Yu's words, Long Yao couldn't help but fall into thought and fell silent. On the other side, the curse worm had also used curses to reform his body into a human form. He glanced at Bai Yu, who was looking at him, and Long Yao, who was deep in thought. He bowed slightly to Bai Yu and asked, Master, how do I acknowledge you as my master? Bai Yu glanced at Long Yao, who was deep in thought, and didn't disturb her. Instead, he smiled at the curse worm and asked, before you acknowledge me as your master, I have to ask you one more time. Are you truly willing to acknowledge me as your master without any regret? The curse worm asked in confusion, is that important? In his opinion, after he acknowledged Bai Yu as his master, he would no longer be able to disobey Bai Yu's orders. It didn't matter whether he sincerely acknowledged Bai Yu as his master. It was meaningless. Of course, it's important. You can consider it a test I'm giving you before the master recognition. Don't worry. No matter what you answer, I won't make things difficult for you. The premise is, I want your innermost thoughts. Innermost thoughts. The curse worm muttered to himself, and then began to seriously think about Bai Yu's question. To be honest, Bai Yu possessed the 4th-ranked ancestral dragon spirit. It was impossible for him to find a better backer than Bai Yu in the void. If he acknowledged Bai Yu as his master, although he would lose his freedom, the future would be bright. He would no longer have to worry about his power being coveted by others. He could even become stronger with Bai Yu's increasing power. But the curse worm thought about the words the curse god had said to him before it died. He also felt a little unwilling to acknowledge Bai Yu as his master. After thinking it over, the curse worm furrowed his brows. Finally, he replied to Bai Yu, I don't know. Chapter 339. Subduing the Curse Worm. You don't know? Upon hearing the curse worm's expected response, Bai Yu's lips curled into a slight smile as he said, I understand. Then let's begin the master recognition ritual now. With that, Bai Yu activated Long Yao's divine power. A ball of light containing his and Long Yao's soul force appeared in his palm, flying towards the curse worm. Inject your soul into it and bind it with Long Yao's soul. Acknowledge Long Yao as your master, Bai Yu said. Seeing that Bai Yu had no reaction after hearing his response, and simply began the master recognition ritual, the curse worm couldn't help but ask Bai Yu, Master, is there nothing wrong with my answer? In his view, his answer wouldn't earn Bai Yu's trust at all. It wouldn't have been strange if Bai Yu erased his consciousness and completely used him as a tool to wield curses. Bai Yu laughed and said, Actually, It was because I knew you would give that answer that I chose to erase the curse god's consciousness while preserving your complete personality. Otherwise, I could have completely transformed the curse god into a puppet, which would have allowed me to completely unleash all the power of this innate celestial spirit. The curse worm couldn't understand Bayu's words. He asked, why? Bayu didn't explain it to the curse worm. He said, you'll understand later. Now, let's proceed with the master recognition. I have a friend who is waiting for you to save them. Yes. Hearing Bayu's words, the curse worm didn't hesitate any longer. He suppressed the doubts in his heart, injected his soul into the ball of light, and began the master recognition ritual, acknowledging Long Yao as his master. As the curse worms and Long Yao's souls became bound together, Bayu gradually obtained the curse worm's information, gaining the ability to create and wield curses that the curse worm possessed. Numerous curses that the curse worm had mastered manifested in Bayu's mind. Now, Bayu was capable of creating a new cursed dead zone in an instant. Most of the curses mastered by the curse worm are cruel and domineering. Although this power is sinister and malicious, there is no psychological burden. In using it against enemies, Bayu murmured to himself, quite pleased with his newly acquired power. Now that he had obtained the curse worm's power, he also had the ability to remove the curse that curse was afflicted with. Without bothering the curse worm, Bayu retrieved the Eastern Emperor Bell and then began to remove Curse's curse. The curses on Curse's body disappeared bit by bit. However, due to the erosion of the curses, Curse no longer had a body or a soul. After the curses were removed, all that remained of Curse was a wisp of lingering will. As the curses within her body disappeared, Curse also woke up. She discovered that she was gradually returning to normal. She couldn't hold back her emotions and covered her face as she cried. She had waited too long for this day. Thank you. Bayu. Curse thanked Bayu through her sobs. Because of the curses, I lost myself, my family, and even the right to die. I never thought that one day I would become human again. Even if I'm only human for a short time now, I'm already very happy and content. Bayu, thank you. Bayu laughed and said, Curse, don't be so sentimental. You're talking as if you're going to die soon. Curse was stunned. Aren't I about to die? Her body and soul had both become curses. Now that the curses on her body were removed by Bayu, she was left with only a wisp of lingering will, which would soon disappear into the void. This was her preordained fate. Who said you were going to die? Bayu chuckled. Then, he took out a piece of 9 heavens breath soil and began to create a new body for Curse. Although he had previously used the last piece of 9 heavens breath soil in the 3 realms to save his wife, Lu Wan, he had traveled to different universes after becoming one of the 7 pillars, collecting a large amount of materials and creating an even more powerful 9 heavens breath soil. He had done so in order to prepare for situations like this. After all, as he traveled through the original chaos, he would inevitably encounter powerful enemies, and those around him might be in danger. But as long as he had the 9 heavens breath soil, even if those around him were left with only a wisp of lingering will, he would be able to bring them back. Under Curse's shocked gaze, Bayu used the 9 heavens breath soil to create a person who was identical to Curse, while also separating some of his own soul force to create a soul that had no consciousness and only pure soul force. In a very short time, Bayu had created a perfect person out of thin air, who was even more powerful than Curse's original body. All right, Bayu smiled slightly at the dumbfounded Curse. Come and experience this new body that I have created for you. Curse looked at the body that was identical to her. She pursed her lips, then suppressed her excitement and shock. She slowly flew towards the body and merged with it. Soon, the body made from 9 heavens breath soil opened its eyes. Curse looked at her new body in disbelief, exclaiming, "It's identical. I can't feel any discomfort at all. It's as if this body truly belonged to me. This is too amazing." Just as Bayu was about to say something, Sugu suddenly flew out of Bayu's small world and questioned Bayu, "Damn it, Bayu. You have such a good thing, but you've been keeping it from me this whole time and didn't let your brother use it? Your brother here is still just a consciousness. I don't have a body either." Bai looked at the furious Su Gu with surprise and couldn't help but say, "Aren't your body and soul still intact? Why would you need to use the 9 heavens breath soil to create a body? The materials that I used to make the 9 heavens breath soil are very precious." Hearing Bai's words, Su Gu became even more furious. He angrily said to Bai, "Good kid, I was risking my life for you, and you are still being stingy about your little bit of material? Yes, I do still have a body, but that body has been constantly restrained by the Void Spirit King and the rampaging Bai. It has long since been ravaged beyond recognition. Moreover, my body is still far away in the primordial origin realm, and I don't know when I'll be able to go back. And even if I do go back, I may not even be able to survive in that body. I don't care. You have to use your so-called 9 heavens breath soil to create a brand new body for me." Seeing Su Gu's impatient look, Bai shook his head with a smile and said, all right, I'll help you create one." As he said this, Bai took out another piece of 9 heavens breath soil. Just as he was preparing to create a new body for Su Gu according to his current appearance, Su Gu then said, "Wait, you have to create it according to my ideas." With that, Su Gu sent a vision of a handsome and majestic beast to Bai's mind. Bai looked at Su Gu's new vision. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he looked at the tiny Su Gu in exasperation and said, "Do you have any shame?" Chapter 340, Heading to the Skywalker's headquarters. Su Gu was a bit embarrassed after being mocked by Bai. He scratched his head awkwardly and said, "I finally have a chance to change my appearance, so I have to seize it, right? Moreover, there's Bai. Okay, I know what you're thinking. I'll help you with this." After hearing Su Gu's words, Bai understood what Su Gu had been thinking. He didn't expose Su Gu's thoughts and immediately used the 9 heavens breath soil to create a handsome and majestic beast, following the image that Su Gu had provided. Su Gu nodded in satisfaction after seeing the new image that Bai created for him. Not bad. Not bad at all. Bai, you're truly my good brother." Smiling, Su Gu couldn't wait to rush into his new body, wanting to experience his own metamorphosis. As Su Gu entered his new body, the handsome and majestic beast suddenly opened its eyes. Just its imposing aura was enough to exude an extremely powerful presence. While Bai was using the 9 heavens breath soil to help Su Gu construct his body, he also used his spiritual power to enhance Su Gu's body. Such surging spiritual power. Su Gu felt the surging power of qi and blood within his body. He could no longer hold back. He raised his head and roared, "Roar!" Su Gu's loud roar echoed through the void, even scaring away several void beasts that were wandering nearby. "Haha, I'm so freaking handsome." After roaring loudly, Su Gu also began to laugh loudly, shamelessly praising himself. "Bai, I'll remember this favor. Bai still needs to be taken care of, so I'll return to your small world first. I won't disturb you anymore." Su Gu was now extremely satisfied with his new appearance. He also couldn't wait to return to Bai's small world, to be by Ai Shuang's side. He wanted to show his brand new appearance to Bai. With Su Gu's little interlude, everyone present smiled. Even the curse worm, who was incredibly nervous in front of Bai, felt much more relaxed at this moment. After resolving Su Gu's needs, Bai once again looked at Curse, who was still adapting to her new body, and asked, "Curse, do you have a place to go now?" Curse looked back at Bai, shook her head and said, "No, my family and my home have already been destroyed by the cursed dead zone. I don't know where I should go now." When Curse was being tortured by the cursed dead zone's curses, she had been living in pain every day. She had no mood to think about anything else. Now, she had gotten rid of the curses and gained a new life. For a while, she was free of a lot of worries. However, correspondingly, Curse had also become a lot more confused. Bai also understood the predicament that Curse was facing. So, without beating around the bush, he invited Curse, "If you don't mind, you can come with me." "Come with you?" Hearing Bai's words, Curse's eyes lit up slightly, and she asked, Can I?" After seeing Bai and Long Yao's power, Curse understood that she was currently just a burden. Following Bai, she would not be able to help in any way. "Of course you can. Baiyu smiled slightly at Curse. In the near future, I will return to the original chaos to reclaim my home and recreate a peaceful and beautiful world. At that time, you can also have a peaceful and beautiful life in that world. A peaceful and beautiful life, Curse murmured, her eyes involuntarily showing a trace of anticipation for the future. Baiyu continued to say to Curse, however, before I reclaim my home, I still have to go to a dangerous place. There may also be some uncontrollable dangers. Can you accept that? I can accept it, Curse quickly replied. As long as you don't think I'll be a hindrance, I will naturally not be afraid of any danger. That's good. In the meantime, you will live in my small world, just like AI Shuang. After confirming Curse's intentions, Baiyu nodded slightly and raised his hand, taking Curse into his small world. After seeing Baiyu settle Curse, Longyao then smiled at Baiyu and asked, Master, now that the curse worm has been subdued and Curse's issues have been resolved, the cursed dead zone problem is now over. Where are we heading next? She had followed Baiyu out because she wanted to see the wonders of the void strong. She had once heard countless stories of the legends from the test takers, and she now wanted to see those legends with her own eyes. A mere cursed dead zone was not enough to satisfy her appetite. Don't worry, you'll have a lot to do next. Baiyu also knew what Longyao was thinking. He laughed and said, I still have unfinished business with the Skywalkers. I'm planning to settle things with the Oracle. Master is going to cause trouble for Tianli now? Longyao asked in surprise. She had thought that Baiyu would settle things with the Skywalkers at a later time. Baiyu nodded and said, Yes. The Oracle has already made a move against me once. I estimate it won't be long before he makes another move. It's better to solve this matter as soon as possible. Also, I have great use for the Skywalkers organization. After solving the problem with the Oracle, I want to take control of them. Now that Baiyu had Longyao and the Curse Worm, two innate celestial spirits, his power was much stronger than before. What's more, Baiyu was also in control of the Hichu Luo Shu and had the means to borrow power from his future. Relying on this power, Baiyu was confident enough to defeat the Oracle, and he also had enough means to control the Skywalkers organization. And once he solved the problem with the Oracle, it wouldn't be far away from the time that he could return to the original chaos, overthrow the rule of the Watchers, and save his wife, Lu Wan, and the Three Realms. I see. Longyao nodded. Then, she said to Baiyu, All right. I've also wanted to see what kind of person the wielder of the great transformation of heavenly evolution divine skill is. We definitely have to meet him this time. Master, are we setting off now? Yes, I have Yu Ying's teleportation talisman. I can go straight to their headquarters. But we still have to be careful. After all, the opponent is a top-level force in the void. We can't just rush in without thinking. My identity in their eyes should still be the traitorous pillar of the Watchers. They need me to invade the original chaos. We can use this to gain an advantage. Therefore, you and the Curse Worm will temporarily be my trump cards. You'll have to hide and not raise their suspicions. Longyao replied, I have no problem with that. The Curse Worm also quickly bowed and said, I will listen to Master's instructions. Good. After setting his next goal, Baiyu took Longyao and the Curse Worm into his body. Then, he took out Yu Ying's teleportation talisman and injected spiritual power into it. The teleportation talisman lit up with a dazzling light, and Baiyu directly disappeared from his spot. Chapter 341. A Path to Destruction. In the void, there was a massive mountain floating in the darkness, known as Skywalk Peak. This was the headquarters of the Skywalkers, a mysterious place within the void, rarely known to outsiders. Even the void beasts that roamed the void, if they accidentally bumped into Skywalk Peak, would pass right through it without any resistance, never even aware of its existence. At the foot of Skywalk Peak, there was a vast plaza, the only passage for Skywalkers to enter and exit the mountain. At this moment, in the empty plaza, space slightly distorted. Baiyu, now wearing his seven-pillar mask again, emerged from the distortion. So, this is the headquarters of the Skywalkers? Baiyu surveyed the magnificent mountain before him and couldn't help but say, it's a far cry from the Watchers' headquarters. Although Skywalk Peak was incredibly grand, its volume comparable to a star, the The palace where the Watchers' headquarters was located was larger than an entire universe. The Skywalkers, being an opposing force comparable in strength to the Watchers, having their headquarters in a mere mountain was somewhat disappointing to Baiyu. Who goes there? And why do you possess a Skywalk symbol? Suddenly, two men in heavy armor, wielding long spears, appeared in the plaza and questioned Baiyu. Baiyu, new to Skywalk Peak and unsure of the situation, didn't intend to start a conflict immediately. He cupped his fist in greeting, saying, "I am Baiyu, the seventh pillar of the Watchers. I'm here to seek an audience with the Oracle." The seventh pillar of the Watchers? Upon hearing Baiyu's words, the two guards at the mountain gate's expressions instantly changed. They gripped their spears tighter and pointed them at Baiyu, angrily saying, "The seventh pillar of the Watchers dares to come to our territory? Are you seeking death?" Just then, a flustered Ewing flew down from Skywalk Peak and shouted, "Brothers, hold your fire. Mr. Bai is one of us." Hearing Yu Ying's words, the two guards lowered their weapons, though they didn't let their guard down. They turned to Yu Ying, asking, "Yu Ying, this is the seventh pillar of the Watchers. How can he be one of us?" Yu Ying quickly explained, "Lord Zero has been collaborating with Mr. Bai in the primordial chaos. Mr. Bai is the key to our Skywalker's invasion of the primordial chaos. We cannot be rude to him." After Yu Ying's explanation, the two guards seemed to understand, looking at Baiyu with a knowing expression. One of the guards chuckled, "So, a turncoat, huh? But we didn't expect there to be any smart people among the Watchers who know to abandon darkness for light." The other guard laughed, "Of course. We Skywalkers are renowned in the void. The Watcher bunch should have been our dogs long ago." As the two guards spoke disrespectfully about the Watchers and Baiyu to his face, Yu Ying's smile became strained, and he stood awkwardly, unsure of what to do. Yu Ying was a small fry among the Skywalkers, his rank not much higher than the gate guards. The two gate guards didn't even see Yu Ying as worthy of their attention. As for Baiyu, even though he was the seventh pillar of the Watchers, a rank equivalent to Skywalker Zero, in the eyes of the two guards, he was nothing but a dog, because this was the Skywalker's headquarters. Behind his mask, Yu Ying couldn't see Baiyu's expression. He could only cautiously say, "Mr. Bai, the two guards are blunt, and they don't mean any harm. Please don't take their words to heart." Baiyu's eyes didn't show any change. He simply glanced at the two guards and smiled. "I'm here to cooperate with the Skywalkers, so I have no desire to become enemies with them." However, as Baiyu said those words, the curse insects within him stirred, silently chanting some form of curse. The two guards, the targets of the curse, were completely unaware of the curse being cast upon them. They simply turned their noses up at Baiyu and snorted, "Humph, we're sure you wouldn't dare. Since you've chosen to join the Skywalkers, we won't stop you. But if you dare to cause any trouble in Skywalk Peak, don't blame us for being impolite." Having spoken, the two guards stepped aside, clearing a path for Baiyu. Baiyu didn't say anything, but cupped his fist as a show of gratitude. "Thank you." Yu Ying, afraid that the two guards would say something offensive again, didn't dare linger any longer. He immediately said to Baiyu, "Mr. Bai, let's go inside." With that, Yu Ying pulled Baiyu onto the mountain path. After they got some distance from the mountain gate, Yu Ying apologized to Baiyu. "I am so sorry, Mr. Bai. The Skywalkers have been expanding so rapidly. There are a lot of people mixed in, with varying qualities. And on top of that, you're from the Watchers. It's inevitable that you'll be met with some difficulties. I'm just glad that you're so understanding and willing to overlook the rude words of those two fools. If it were me, I'd definitely have given them a beating they wouldn't forget." Baiyu didn't say anything. He asked Yu Ying, "When are we going to see the Oracle?" Hearing Baiyu's question, Yu Ying, who was previously so talkative, suddenly looked distressed. Seeing Yu Ying's expression, Baiyu asked, "Is there a problem?" Yu Ying pursed his lips, hesitated for a moment, then said, "Mr. Bai, I'll be frank with you. My position within the Skywalkers is very low. I have very little authority. Although Lord Zero sent word back to headquarters from the primordial chaos, no one here is paying me any attention. Since returning to Skywalk Peak on my own, I've talked to many people, but no one is willing to introduce us to the Oracle." Baiyu raised an eyebrow. "So I come all the way to your headquarters, and can't even get an audience with the Oracle? Although Bai Yu came with the intention to get rid of the Oracle, his official identity was still as an envoy from the Watchers. The Watchers were currently stronger than the Skywalkers in the Void, and Bai Yu's help was critical for them to get through this difficult time. Yet despite all this, Bai Yu had seen no sign of urgency from the Skywalkers regarding this matter. Even Long Yao, hidden within Bai Yu's body, couldn't help but say, "The downfall of a power often begins with arrogance. We've only just stepped inside the Skywalker's gate, and we're already seeing their path to destruction. It seems like the Skywalkers appear strong on the surface, but they are already internally rotten. Master, I think it would be better to just create a new force from scratch, instead of trying to subdue such a corrupt one." Ewing couldn't hear Long Yao's comments on the Skywalkers. He quickly smiled at Bai Yu and said, "We have Lord Zero's recommendation, so we will definitely be able to see him. It'll just take a little time. If Mr. Bai isn't in a hurry, you can stay at my place to rest. I'll let you know the moment I have any news." Bai Yu gave Ewing a deep look, then nodded. "All right." Chapter 342, Revenge. At the foot of Skywalk Peak, in a secluded area, were a number of small, house-like buildings. From a distance, besides this area being relatively clean, it didn't look much different from a slum. Bai Yu followed Yu-ing to this place. Seeing the numerous small houses ahead, he couldn't help but ask Yu-ing, "You live here? Why is everyone so crowded together? Isn't Skywalk Peak supposed to be huge?" Yu-ing scratched his head and explained to Bai Yu, "Mr. Bai, you don't know that, in the Skywalkers, the higher your status, the bigger your living space is. Like the Oracle, his place takes up a third of the top part of Skywalk Peak. The middle third is split between Zero and the other high-ranking members. The bottom third, apart from the Skywalkers' important facilities and training areas, doesn't leave much space for us to live in. But, Mr. Bai, don't look down on my place. It has everything you need, and it's absolutely quiet. It won't disturb you." Hearing Yu-ying's words, Bai Yu couldn't help but laugh. "I thought the hierarchy was pretty strict on the Watcher's side, but it seems like you Skywalkers are even more so." Yu-ing said with a bitter smile, "There's nothing we can do about it. All of us at the bottom are too weak. If we didn't join the Skywalkers, we wouldn't be able to survive in the Void on our own. For people like us, being able to join the Skywalkers and be protected by them is a great blessing." Bai Yu said to Yu-ing, "With your strength, if you went to the primordial chaos and found a universe to settle in, you'd be able to become a powerful figure, living a comfortable life, right?" Yu-ing sighed. "We'd have to be able to go to the primordial chaos first. Those kinds of super large worlds with extremely complete rules are incredibly rare in the Void, and they're mostly occupied by powerful forces. Don't think that our Skywalkers are strong. We don't have a large world that belongs to us. Otherwise, the Oracle wouldn't have decided to invade the primordial chaos." Bai Yu then asked, "But isn't the initial realm also a large, complete, and organized world? The Watchers don't occupy that place, and your Skywalkers even carried out massacres there. Why did you go all the way to invade the primordial chaos when you could have taken the initial realm first?" Ewing shook his head and said to Bai Yu with a bitter smile, "Mr. Bai, you're flattering me a bit. I'm just a normal member, and I haven't even met the Oracle many times. How would I know what those at the top are thinking?" "Okay, forget I asked." Bai Yu didn't continue to question him and followed Yu-ing into the residential area. Along the way, Bai Yu saw a lot of Skywalkers, but they were all busy with their own things, completely ignoring Bai Yu and Yu-ing. Yu-ing continued to explain to Bai Yu, "Mr. Bai, members at our level have very heavy workloads, and we rarely have time to rest, so we don't interact with each other much. I was sent out to the primordial chaos and then assigned to work under you by Lord Zero, which is why I seem so relaxed." Bai Yu joked, "I didn't expect the Skywalkers to be like a sweatshop. What do you all even do? Is there so much work?" Yu-ing, "The Oracle generates a large number of prophecies every day, and these prophecies cover the primordial chaos. Our task is to verify these prophecies and make the appropriate choices according to the Oracle's instructions." Bai Yu, "So the Oracle's workload is even greater than yours? What is he trying to achieve?" Yu-ing smiled bitterly. "Mr. Bai, that's a good question. The thoughts of the great Oracle are beyond my comprehension. Mr. Bai, we're here." During his conversation with Bai Yu, Ying arrived at his residence, a small house with an area of less than 100 square meters. Just as Bai Yu arrived in front of Yu Ying's house, the curse insects in Bai Yu's body alerted him, reminding him that there was a vicious curse within Yu Ying's house that could absorb people's cultivation. Hearing the curse insect's warning, Bai Yu calmly looked at Yu Ying and asked, "Have you been living here ever since you returned?" Yu Ying shook his head. "Not really. After returning, I have been trying to get you an audience with the Oracle. After facing rejection everywhere, I was afraid you would clash with the other Skywalkers, so I waited near the mountain gate until you arrived." After hearing Yu Ying's words, Bai Yu asked the curse insects in his body, "Can you tell when the curse was applied?" The curse insects said, "It was applied within the past 3 days. Although the caster is not that strong, he is stronger than Yu Ying. So Yu Ying is telling the truth. Someone from the Skywalkers is trying to harm either Yu Ying or you, Master. Someone stronger than Yu Ying, but not too strong. So it probably wasn't the Oracle's doing. Come to think of it, the Oracle wants to possess my body. He could just strike directly. There's no need to play such a boring game here." After contemplating for a moment, Bai Yu understood that the person who cursed Yu Ying's house was the difficulty that Yu Ying had mentioned the Skywalkers would be causing. Bai Yu wasn't surprised by this. After all, he was the 7th pillar of the Watchers, and the Watchers and Skywalkers were sworn enemies. There must be a lot of Skywalkers who died at the hands of the Watchers. It was normal for the Skywalkers in Skywalk Peak to hate the Watchers and to hate Bai Yu. However, Bai Yu didn't care about the grudges between the Skywalkers and the Watchers. He came to cause trouble for the Oracle. As for the Oracle's minions, if they were tired of living, Bai Yu didn't mind sending them on their way. Having understood the situation, Bai Yu ignored the curse in Yu Ying's house and pushed the door open. As the master of the curse source, the curse insects, Bai Yu was the origin of all curses, the ancestor of all evils. These Skywalkers who tried to use a curse to harm him were just displaying their ignorance. Yu Ying was still completely oblivious. He followed Bai Yu into the room and smiled. "Mr. Bai, please rest in my room. I'll try to make some things happen and make sure that the Oracle will see you." With that, Yu Ying left the room, gently closing the door behind Bai Yu and leaving the residential area. As Yu Ying left, several shadows appeared around Yu Ying's house, staring at the house, and said in a sinister tone, "Brothers, the scum from the Watchers is here. He will be cursed soon enough. We must kill him today and avenge our fallen brothers." "No problem." The shadows all chuckled, before merging back into the darkness and disappearing. Chapter 343, The Cursed Room. Inside Yu Ying's room. As soon as Bai Yu entered, the curse insects marked the location with the most intense concentration of curses. Bai Yu, being very accommodating, immediately chose that spot and sat down in a meditative posture, starting to cultivate the great transformation of heavenly evolution technique. In the shadows of the room, several figures emerged. Seeing Bai Yu sitting in the heart of the curse, they snickered, "Ha, look at that fool. He went right to the center of the curse himself. What an unlucky bastard. I was wondering how to make him succumb to the curse, but now he's coming to us. This saves us a lot of trouble. So, shall we activate the curse now and kill him?" "No way. I want to play with him first. Killing him right away would make it too easy for him." The figures whispered among themselves. One of them decided to directly tease Bai Yu. His shadow sank into the floor, stealthily approaching Bai Yu. Meanwhile, Bai Yu acted as if he knew nothing, focusing solely on circulating his cultivation technique to improve his power. Bai Yu possessed the great transformation of heavenly evolution technique, a divine skill which meant that as long as he cultivated, his combat strength would increase, without any bottlenecks. And after Bai Yu had figured out how to deal with the demonic energy-derived consciousness, the only flaw of this demonic technique was gone. Now, whenever he had time, Bai Yu would practice this demonic technique to increase his battle power. As for the small, evil-minded figures harboring ill intentions, they weren't worth Bai Yu's time or energy to deal with. Just reflecting their curses back at them would be enough to give them trouble. The shadow approaching Bai Yu had no idea what he was getting himself into. He slowly approached Bai Yu, and when he saw that Bai Yu was still not moving, he extended a hand from the floor, signaling his companions that everything was fine. However, the next moment, the shadow was suddenly sucked into Bai Yu's shadow, disappearing without a trace. When did Lao San learn how to intrude on other people's shadows? The other shadows hidden in the darkness were stunned, their faces full of astonishment as they witnessed Lao San being absorbed into by Yu's shadow. They waited for a while, but when Lao San didn't reappear, they realized something was wrong. The strongest of them, the leader, said in a stern voice, "Something's wrong. Lao San shouldn't be taking this long. One of you go check on him." The smallest of the shadows said, "Boss, has that guy found us? Is he trying to bait us now?" Lao Si has a point. After all, he's the seventh pillar of the Watchers. At his level, he would be a high-ranking figure with a number in our Skywalkers. Another medium-sized figure agreed, speaking to their leader, the strongest of them. Hearing what the two said, the leader was silent for a moment. Then, he gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, we've probably been tricked. Lao Air, Lao Si, activate the curse now. Let's drain that guy's spiritual energy first." Okay. The remaining two shadows responded quickly, and then they started to circulate their spiritual energy, activating the curse in the room. But, just as they activated the curse, Lao San's shadow climbed out of Bai Yu's shadow. Looking terrified, he shouted to the others in the dark, "Run! This guy is a monster." Lao San's words immediately terrified the three shadows hiding in the dark. Before they could react, Bai Yu's shadow transformed into countless curses, binding Lao San's body. Ah! Lao San let out a painful scream. He was then devoured by countless curses in the three shadows' horrified sight. That guy. Is he a cursed man from the cursed death domain? How can he have so many curses? The three shadows hidden in the dark were frightened by Bai Yu's methods. They immediately realized that they had messed with a tough character, and they all retreated into the shadows, trying to flee the room. But just as they tried to escape, their curses against Bai Yu took effect. However, it was not as they expected. The curse was not targeting Bai Yu, but the three of them. As the curse began to absorb their cultivation, the three shadows could no longer maintain their shadow forms and turned into humanoid creatures with long upper bodies and short lower bodies. "B-Boss, what do we do now?" The skinny shadow, Lao Si, looked at the leader in terror after returning to his original form. They had come to kill Bai Yu to avenge their brothers, but now Bai Yu was untouched. They had lost one of their own, and they had put themselves in danger. The turn of events was completely beyond their expectations. Don't panic. This is Skywalk Peak. He is a turncoat from the Watchers. He wouldn't dare to make trouble here. The leader, enduring his fear, tried to reassure his brothers. Then, he shouted at Bai Yu, "Hey, you Bai. This is Skywalk Peak. I advise you not to mess around. If you want to join us, you have to behave and do as we say." Bai Yu did not respond to the leader, remaining sitting on the floor, cultivating the great transformation of heavenly evolution technique. Seeing that Bai Yu didn't respond, the leader immediately roared, "Hey, are you listening to me? Don't think I'm joking. We are sent by Lord 13. If you dare to touch even one hair on us, Lord 13 will never let you off." As the leader brought out his backer, the other two grew bolder. They started mimicking the leader, continuously warning Bai Yu. In their view, although what they were doing was not above board, it was the intention of many in the Skywalkers. If Bai Yu wanted to make a place for himself in the Skywalkers, he would never dare to kill them. The noises in Yu Ying's room grew more and more unbearable, but Bai Yu still didn't respond. He even completed a full cycle of the great transformation of heavenly evolution technique. After warning Bai Yu for a while, and seeing that Bai Yu still hadn't moved, the leader immediately gave a signal to the other two. He then got up and carefully headed towards the door. When he reached the door and placed his hand on it, and Bai Yu still didn't react, he finally relaxed. He pushed the door open, wanting to leave. "You, Bai, don't think that this is over. This is Skywalk Peak, not your Watchers." The leader was threatening Bai Yu while pushing the door open. But before he could finish his sentence, countless curse inscriptions appeared all over his body. Seeing the curse inscriptions on the leader's body, the other two shadows' pupils shrank as they exclaimed, "Boss, look at your body. What's on my body?" Confused, the leader turned his head back. Before he could understand what was happening, His entire body began to melt. Then, before the horrified gaze of the other two, the leader was directly reduced to blood. Chapter 344:13. As the leader at the door melted into blood, the two behind him were utterly terrified, frozen in place, their minds blank. How could this be? The two could not understand what was happening. They never imagined that they could experience death in Skywalk Peak. With the remaining two paralyzed with fear, Yu Ying's room fell into a deathly silence. The two could even hear each other's heartbeats. Meanwhile, Baiyu was like a statue, completely still, as if the happenings in the room were completely unrelated to him. Bang! Suddenly, the door slammed shut. The four walls of the room, including the floor and ceiling, were instantly covered in dense curse inscriptions. These inscriptions were like living insects, rapidly crawling all over the two figures. Lao Si, your face. There are so many curse inscriptions crawling on it. Lao Er was looking at Lao Si in horror. His face twisted as numerous curse inscriptions climbed all over it. Lao Er, your face also has a lot of bugs. What should we do? Lao Si was on the verge of tears, the fear of death filling his mind. He had never experienced something this terrifying in his life. Thud. As Lao Si was crying out, Lao Er couldn't hold it back anymore. He knelt down in front of Baiyu and began to kowtow, begging for mercy. Mr. Bai, please forgive us. It was our fault. We did not know what we were doing. Please spare us this time. We will never dare to do it again. Lao Si also realized what was happening. He kneeled down as well, kowtowing to Baiyu and begging with tears. However, Baiyu, who was still cultivating, acted as if he couldn't hear their pleas. He remained unmoving, sitting in the center of the curse. More and more curse inscriptions attached themselves to Lao Er and Lao Si, and their bodies began to melt. Scarlet blood flowed to the floor, staining the numerous curse inscriptions. Realizing the changes in his body, Lao Er's eyes filled with endless despair. Then, his expression turned vicious, and he roared at Baiyu, "You, Bai, since you're being so ruthless, I'll fight you to the death." With that, Lao Er rushed towards Baiyu. However, his cultivation was already drained by the curse, and now he was also being cursed by Baiyu's inscriptions. He didn't even reach Baiyu before turning into a pool of blood mid-air, being absorbed by the inscriptions on the floor. The last remaining shadow, Lao Si, after realizing that he was the only one left out of the four brothers, finally snapped. The tension he had been holding onto shattered, and he directly passed out from the fear. His soul was then consumed by the curse inscriptions. SK, these guys are really easy to deal with. I was just warming up, and they all got wiped out. With such strength, they actually thought they could harm Master. The curse insects emerged from Baiyu's body, looking at Lao Si on the ground, a hint of disdain in their eyes. Although the curse insects were previously beaten by Baiyu and Long Yao, that didn't mean the curse insects were weak. It only meant that Baiyu and Long Yao were strong. The curse insects were ranked 17th among the primordial celestial spirits, the source of curses, and the infamous cursed death domain in the void was derived from the curse insects' powers. Curse insects, your strength is acceptable, but your method of using curses to kill people is rather clumsy and unesthetic. Long Yao flew out of Baiyu's body, commenting on the curse insects' methods. Such small fries, and you use such complicated means. The curse insects immediately bowed to Long Yao and said, "Understood, Sister Long. I will definitely improve in the future." When Long Yao and the curse insects were together in Baiyu's body, Long Yao had disciplined the curse insects into submission. Now, the curse insects would not dare to disobey Long Yao in the slightest. Yes, in the future, when you fight, strive for conciseness and power. Long Yao nodded with satisfaction, and with a wave of her hand, cleaned up all the blood on the floor, making Yu Ying's room look as clean as if nothing had happened. Just as Long Yao finished cleaning the room and was about to continue lecturing the curse insects, her eyes flashed, and she looked outside the house. "Someone's coming. Let's go back." As the words faded, Long Yao and the curse insects turned into two beams of light, re-entering Baiyu's body and hiding themselves. Mr. Bai, I found a way. At that moment, Ewing pushed the door open and said excitedly to Bai Yu, I asked around Skywalk Peak again. Lord 13 is willing to introduce you to the Oracle. 13? Bai Yu had just finished a full cycle of his cultivation. He opened his eyes and looked at Ewing, raising an eyebrow. Although he had entrusted the matter of dealing with the small figures to the curse insects, it didn't mean he was completely ignorant of the outside world. He had heard that the backer of the 4 figures who had come to trouble him was that guy called 13. Ewing, still unaware of what had happened, continued, That's right. Lord 13 is a powerful figure in the Skywalkers, on the same level as Lord Zero. His position in the Skywalkers is comparable to your position in the Watchers. With Lord 13's recommendation, Mr. Bai will be able to meet the Oracle easily. Oh, also, Lord 13 said that he is very interested in you. He is waiting outside now and wants to meet you. Interesting, then I must go and meet him. Hearing Yu Ying's words, Bai Yu also became interested in 13. He finished his meditation and stood up. Of course, Bai Yu didn't expect that 13 would introduce him to the Oracle. With his current strength, he could meet the Oracle anytime he wanted. No one could stop him. Bai Yu was curious, what was the reason for 13 to hate him so much? 13 had not only sent his underlings after him, he also wanted to come personally. Ewing didn't know what Bai Yu was thinking. He thought that he had done a great deed and happily said to Bai Yu, Mr. Bai, I've run my legs off for your sake this time. If you get promoted in the future, you must take care of me. No problem. Bai Yu smiled at Ewing and walked out of the room. He saw a purple-haired man standing outside, wearing a white robe with pointed ears and a pale face. Are you 13? Bai Yu asked the man who looked a bit like an elf. 13 looked calmly at Bai Yu and said faintly, I heard you are one of the 7th pillars of the Watchers. Is that correct? Of course, it's the real deal. Bai Yu chuckled. 13 continued, Do you know Tianji? What was your relationship with him? Bai Yu, I know him. We are half friends, I guess. Hearing Bai Yu's words, 13's eyes flashed, and he suddenly released a chilling killing intent. In that case, you must die. As soon as 13 said those words, Yu Ying, who had been smiling behind Bai Yu, suddenly froze. His smile completely vanished. Chapter 345, Strong or Weak? Lord 13? Upon hearing 13's words, Yu Ying was completely bewildered, his mind a blank. How could things be so different from what he had imagined? Bai Yu, on the other hand, wasn't surprised by the killing intent released by 13. After all, he had already been attacked once, and the mastermind behind it was 13. Bai Yu smiled at 13 and asked, I'm curious, Tianji is the one who provoked you. If you want revenge, go look for him, right? Why are you coming to cause me trouble? Is it because you think that I'm easier to bully than Tianji? You don't dare go looking for Tianji's bad luck. So you come looking for trouble with me? 13 said indifferently, Sooner or later, I'll kill Tianji myself. As for you, you can only blame your bad luck for being friends with Tianji, right? Yu Ying, who was behind Bai Yu, knew things were going wrong as soon as he heard 13's words. He immediately stepped forward. Lord 13, Mr. Bai is here to cooperate with our Skywalkers. He's very important to our Skywalkers. You absolutely can't attack him. 13 narrowed his eyes, looking at Ewing coldly. Who do you think you are, to dare command me? Get out of my way. 13's last words contained terrifying spiritual energy, suddenly slamming into Yu Ying. Just as Yu Ying thought he was going to be shattered by 13's voice, he suddenly felt a peculiar spiritual energy surge into his body, instantly dissolving all of 13's power. Yu Ying was still standing there, unharmed. Seeing that he wasn't hurt, Yu Ying immediately looked at Bai Yu, his eyes full of gratitude. He wasn't stupid. He knew what had just happened. If Bai Yu hadn't intervened, he would have been injured or killed by the impact of 13's power. It could be said that Bai Yu had saved his life. Seeing that Bai Yu had blocked his attack, 13 narrowed his eyes at Bai Yu. It seems that you 7th pillar are worthy of your name after all. You have some strength. At least I won't be bored now. Bai Yu laughed. Are all you Skywalkers so tyrannical? Yu Ying is also a member of your Skywalkers, yet you say you'll kill him just like that? 13 didn't hide anything and sneered. There are many lower-class beings like him in the void. The death of one or two wouldn't make any difference at all. Lord 13? Upon hearing 13's words, Yu Ying was completely stunned. A wave of bitterness welled up in his heart. He had been working diligently for the Skywalkers, but in the end, he was just a low-class being who could be killed at will? At that moment, Yu Ying felt his heart turn cold. 13 didn't care about Yu Ying's opinion at all. The only reason he had even paid attention to Yu Ying was because he needed Yu Ying to find Bai Yu. Normally, he wouldn't even look at Yu Ying. Although he and Yu Ying were both Skywalkers, in reality, they were not on the same level. Seeing the way Yu Ying was clenching his fists, a hint of a smile flashed across Bai Yu's eyes. He asked 13, "Is this the atmosphere among you Skywalkers?" 13, "The strong are always strong. In this dog-eat-dog world, only strength is the only truth. What we are doing is definitely the right thing." Bai Yu laughed. "I thought I would need to use some tricks to take over the Skywalkers. I thought I would encounter difficulties. But from now on, it seems that controlling the Skywalkers will be much easier than I imagined." 13 said in a stern tone. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said." Bai Yu chuckled. Then, he stepped forward, easily breaking through 13's alert range, coming right in front of 13 and placing his hand lightly on 13's shoulder. "The strong are always strong, it's certainly true, but all the strong in the world came from weakness. The vast majority of all living beings are the weak. Your Skywalkers are no different. Now, the ideologies of your Skywalkers are oppressing countless Skywalkers members. I believe that there is a flame smoldering in the hearts of those members. Just a few sparks will be enough to make the fire burn fiercely in the hearts of countless Skywalkers members." Hearing Bai Yu's words, 13 immediately understood what Bai Yu was getting at. He couldn't help but sneer, "Humph! Without the protection of the strong, they're just livestock waiting to be slaughtered in the void. A bunch of rabble. How can they turn the world upside down?" "That's not necessarily true." The corners of Bai Yu's mouth curved into a faint smile. "Besides, you're always talking about the strong this and the strong that. You don't actually think you're that strong, do you?" 13 said coldly, "Whether I'm strong or not, it's enough to kill you." As soon as the words left his mouth, 13 immediately released an overwhelming aura, trying to shake off Bai Yu's hand and then launch a thunderous attack against Bai Yu. However, just as 13's aura was about to surge out, he felt an even stronger force pressing down from Bai Yu's palm, suppressing all the power he had accumulated. 13 was completely unable to move under the pressure from Bai Yu's hand. 13 sensed the incredibly vast power coming from Bai Yu, trying to struggle several times. But Bai Yu's hand on his shoulder was still motionless. Bai Yu looked at 13 with a smile, narrowing his eyes and said, "Is this the power you're so proud of? In my opinion, even Tianji could crush you with a single finger. I've worked with Tianji for many years, and I've never heard him mention you. So, it seems you're nothing more than an insignificant small fry, right? Don't be too arrogant." Hearing Bai Yu's mockery, 13's face turned completely red. An infinite rage surged in his chest, and he frantically channeled the power in his body. But no matter how hard he tried, Bai Yu's hand that was pressing down on him remained still, as if it had been welded onto his shoulder. Yu Ying, seeing 13 being completely suppressed by Bai Yu, had his mouth agape in a big "oh." 13 had a code name in the Skywalkers. He was a powerful figure on the same level as Zero, representing the upper echelon of Skywalker's combat strength. Yet now, Bai Yu could immobilize 13 with a single hand. The difference in power between the two was so great that Yu Ying's mind went blank. "Mr. Bai, is actually this strong?" 13 hadn't expected this situation either. After trying his best to escape Bai Yu's restraint and failing, he also realized that he had messed with someone he shouldn't have. Secretly, he began transmitting a message to other powerful figures, calling for backup. But when 13 tried to transmit his message, he realized that he couldn't contact anyone. Bai Yu had blocked all his means of transmitting information. Realizing this, 13's pupil shrank sharply as he asked Bai Yu in alarm, "What are you going to do?" Bai Yu looked at 13 with a smile. "You're going to try to kill me, and you're asking me what I'm going to do? Do you really think I'm a saint?" Chapter 346, Killing 13. You. After hearing Bayu's words, 13 was initially startled. Then he quickly calmed down and said to Bayu with a smile, Bayu, who do you think you are? And where are you right now? Those ants that you killed earlier, it's no big deal that they died. Their disappearance won't be a big deal in Skywalk Peak. No one will care about them. But I'm different. I'm a powerful figure with a code name in the Skywalkers. Everything I do is under the watchful eyes of the Oracle. Once you dare to attack me, Before 13 could finish his sentence, Bayu directly crushed 13's shoulder, causing him to scream in pain. You really talk too much. When I saw you come out in the beginning, I thought you were somebody. But from what I'm seeing now, you're just a coward who abuses their power and status. You're actually completely spineless. With a character like you, how dare you even talk about getting revenge on Tianji? Bayu spoke calmly. Curse inscriptions appeared on his palm, gradually attaching themselves to 13's crushed shoulder and then spreading throughout 13's body. The cold curse inscriptions constantly stimulated 13's soul, twisting his face, causing him to scream continuously. Ying, who was on the side, clearly saw the fear in 13's eyes. Before this, he couldn't imagine that the once arrogant 13 could now be this pathetic. However, after a moment of shock, Ying regained his senses and quickly persuaded Bayu. Mr. Bai, 13 is a high-ranking member of the Skywalkers. If you really kill him, I'm afraid disaster will befall us. You are still in Skywalk Peak. Please think twice. Ying was not pleading for 13, but was truly concerned about Bayu. After all, from his perspective, Bayu came to Skywalk Peak to cooperate with the Skywalkers. If 13, a high-ranking member of the Skywalkers, was killed by Bayu, then it was not only impossible for Bayu to cooperate with the Skywalkers, but also uncertain whether Bayu could even leave Skywalk Peak alive. Letting go of 13, although it was like letting a tiger return to the mountain and would leave a huge hidden danger, at least it would give Bayu some room to maneuver. After all, not every high-ranking member with a code name agreed with 13. Bayu could also hear the worry in Ying's words. He chuckled, I know what you are worried about, but I'm not in the habit of letting tigers return to the mountain. As soon as the words left his mouth, the curse inscriptions that originated from Bayu's palm quickly spread throughout 13's body. The inscriptions seemed to come alive, constantly drilling into 13's skin and invading his soul. Unimaginable pain was constantly stimulating 13's soul, making him scream as loud as he could. But no matter how loudly he screamed, his voice could not reach 10 meters away. There were many Skywalkers in this residential area, but at this moment, apart from Ying, no Skywalkers member knew of 13's miserable situation. And at this moment, 13 also realized that Bayu was a ruthless person who would actually kill him. He was completely terrified. While his consciousness was still clear, he begged Bayu for mercy. Be Bayu, let me go. There's no feud between us. You don't need to take such a huge risk to kill me. I promise you. After I go back, I will never cause you trouble again. I can even help you meet the Oracle. I swear. Bayu, stop now. There's nothing good that will come from killing me. 13 kept begging Bayu for mercy, but at this moment, Bayu was acting as if he couldn't hear 13's words. He simply kept sending curse inscriptions to 13. At this moment, 13's entire body was covered in curse inscriptions, and his soul was also being eroded by the curse inscriptions. Death was getting closer and closer to 13. In the process of slowly falling into despair, 13 was completely driven mad by Bayu. Knowing that he could not avoid death, he no longer hid his true nature and cursed at Bayu. Bayu, even if you kill me, you'll be joining me soon. The Oracle will avenge me, you just wait. Are your last words over? Then go die. Bayu didn't feel any emotion from 13's threats. After the curse inscriptions were in place, he started the reaping. A large number of curse inscriptions instantly lit up and contracted, and 13, who was screaming, fell silent at that moment, with no more sounds. Bayu released 13's shoulder that was already crushed. 13's corpse was now like a pile of mud, slowly collapsing to the ground. Ying's body involuntarily started to tremble as he looked at 13 lying motionless on the ground. He looked at Bai Yu in terror, trembling as he said, Mr. Bai, you actually killed 13? Even in his wildest dreams, Ewing could not have imagined that he would experience such a thing. Once the news of 13's death spread, the entire Skywalker's organization would be in turmoil, and he and Bai Yu would have no good outcome. However, the situation had already happened. Ewing did not continue to be in shock and fear. He quickly calmed down and immediately dragged 13's corpse to hide it in his house. He said to Bai Yu, Mr. Bai, we can't stay in Skywalk Peak any longer. We need to escape before the matter is exposed. It was impossible to conceal 13's death. The only thing Ewing could think of now was to escape as soon as possible and return to the primordial chaos. Bai Yu was the seventh pillar of the Watchers, and he also had a huge force comparable to the Skywalker's organization behind him. As long as they returned to the primordial chaos, the Skywalkers wouldn't be able to do anything to them. However, Bai Yu didn't respond to Yu Ying's words. He smiled and said, I haven't even met the Oracle yet. What's the hurry to escape? Oh, my ancestors! Upon hearing Bai Yu's words, Ewing immediately became anxious. 13 is an important member of the Skywalker's organization. Mr. Bai, you killed him. The Oracle will never let you off. How can you still think about meeting the Oracle? After 13's death, Ewing had already assumed that he had betrayed the Skywalker's organization. At this moment, he didn't use honorifics for the Oracle anymore, and instead he was thinking wholeheartedly about Bai Yu. After all, Bai Yu was currently the only powerful backer he could rely on. You said 13 is dead? Bai Yu laughed. I didn't kill him. Ah. Ewing was stunned, and he looked at Bai Yu in disbelief, thinking that he had misheard or that Bai Yu had gone mad. He had clearly seen 13 being killed. How could Bai Yu be lying with a straight face? However, just as Ewing was about to ask, 13's corpse, which he had dragged into the room, suddenly stood up, opened his eyes sharply, and looked at Ewing. Ewing was shocked by the sudden resurrection of 13. The fear in his heart was as powerful as tidal waves. How could such a thing have happened? And just as Ewing was in a state of shock, a large number of curse inscriptions once again appeared on 13's body. Chapter 347. The Quarry. Mr. Bai, what's going on with 13? Ewing's gaze darted back and forth between Bai Yu and 13, his mind about to overload from all the thinking. Bai Yu laughed. Don't worry, 13 hasn't come back to life. But his current state doesn't count as death either. He's more like a living dead under my control. As soon as Bai Yu finished speaking, the resurrected 13 knelt in front of Bai Yu stiffly like a puppet, expressing his loyalty. Living dead. Ewing looked at 13 kneeling before Bai Yu, still finding it a bit unbelievable. He turned to Bai Yu and asked, Mr. Bai, this method of making a living dead, is it really going to work? Although 13 was still emitting a living being's aura, his current state looked wrong in every way. Probably, anyone in the Skywalkers could see that something was wrong with 13 now. Why wouldn't it work? The only reason he's acting stiff is because I haven't given him any sentience yet. After Bai Yu laughed, the curse inscriptions around 13's body quickly disappeared, and 13's dull gaze returned to being sharp. He knelt before Bai Yu, bowed respectfully, and said, Thank you, Mr. Bai, for granting me new life. I will do my best to serve you. I happen to have something that I need you to do. Go and make it happen. Get me an audience with the Oracle. No problem, I will do it now. 13 bowed respectfully to Bai Yu again, and left Ewing's room to carry out the tasks that Bai Yu had assigned to him. Ewing saw 13 go from being a puppet to being no different from a real person. He was shocked once again, his mouth agape. He gained a whole new understanding of Bai Yu's methods. A powerful figure like 13 could be killed and then brought back to life at will? If Bai Yu continued to use these methods in Skywalk Peak, the entire Skywalker's organization would probably become a plaything in Bai Yu's hands without realizing it. Bai Yu didn't say much to Ewing. After dealing with the small matter of 13, he said to Ewing, Now that the matter of seeing the Oracle has been resolved, take me to see Skywalk Peak in the meantime. I want to see the actual situation of your Skywalkers. Now that Bai Yu had decided to replace the Oracle and take the Skywalker's organization under his control, he needed to have a systematic understanding of the Skywalkers and then take appropriate actions. Otherwise, even if Bai Yu used brute force to make all the Skywalkers submit, what he would get would only be a force that was outwardly obedient but inwardly defiant. A Skywalker's organization that he couldn't control would be nothing more than a burden to Bai Yu. At this moment, Yu Ying's admiration for Bai Yu had reached its peak. Bai Yu's position in his heart was even vaguely surpassing the Oracle's. Naturally, Yu Ying had no hesitation in following Bai Yu's instructions, saying, "Yes, but Mr. Bai, I can only move around the lower section of Skywalk Peak. I can't take you to see the higher areas." "I know. Just take me to the gathering place of your Skywalker's lowest level members. I want to know the condition of the largest group of people in Skywalk Peak." "The lowest level members of our Skywalkers?" Yu Ying was silent for a moment. He seemed to think of something, and then immediately said to Bai Yu, "Mr. Bai, I know where to go. Please follow me." "Okay." Skywalk Peak, the quarry. A large number of thin and emaciated slaves were mindlessly swinging pickaxes in this huge quarry, digging out crystal ore. In addition to those slaves, there were also a few supervisors with whips, occasionally lashing out at the slaves' backs with their barbed whips, leaving behind gruesome bloody welts. In this quarry, slaves would often collapse from exhaustion, but they wouldn't be given rest. Instead, they would be met with even more vicious lashes from the supervisor's whips. Blood splattered, screams rang out everywhere. Those who could not endure and died from exhaustion would be burned into ashes on the spot by the supervisors. Then, the supervisors would bring out a new slave from a huge cage. This quarry, although full of strange crystal ores and filled with dense spiritual energy, was a pit of despair for those slaves. Bai Yu followed Yu Ying to the edge of the quarry. Seeing the situation in the quarry, he couldn't help but ask Yu Ying, "Do you Skywalkers still use slaves?" Yu Ying didn't deny it, saying, "Yes, Mr. Bai. These slaves are the laborers that the Skywalkers have plundered from various organized worlds. Our Skywalkers are very active in the void, so it's inevitable that our members will clash with the indigenous people of the various organized worlds. And those small organized worlds in the void are not as powerful as the primordial chaos. Their rules are incomplete, and there aren't any powerful people inside. So conflicts between our Skywalkers and those indigenous people mostly end in one-sided massacres. Therefore, almost every Skywalker's member will bring back a large number of slaves when they go out on missions, and they'll be assigned to the quarries to mine." Bai Yu then asked, "What kind of crystal are they mining? What are their uses?" Yu Ying explained, "Those are crystal source stones. The Oracle has set up a large formation within Skywalk Peak. The formation will continuously seize the vitality of various organized worlds in the void and then generate the crystal source stones. The crystal source stones are used to maintain the daily spiritual energy consumption of Skywalk Peak. After all, Skywalk Peak is wandering in the void, and it needs to expend a large amount of spiritual energy every day to maintain the barrier." After listening to Yu Ying, Bai Yu asked again, "However, even if your Skywalkers need the crystal source stones, you shouldn't need to use slaves, right? A considerable number of people in the quarry are ordinary people. They not only have poor endurance, their labor is also not as good as you Skywalkers. Even if you just assign some of those supervisors to work, their efficiency would be much higher than those slaves, right?" In Bai Yu's opinion, there was no need for the Skywalkers, with their capabilities, to use ordinary slaves at all. The existence of those slaves would only slow down the speed at which crystal source stones were extracted. Yu Ying said with a bitter smile, "Mr. Bai, it's useless for you to tell me this. I'm just an insignificant small fry. The use of slaves was ordered by Lord Oracle. There's nothing I can do about it. I didn't expect that the Oracle would have such a perverse hobby." Bai Yu looked at the slaves in the quarry, his gaze gradually becoming cold. Actually, Bai Yu didn't care about the powerful being domineering. After all, in every world, the rule of the strong preying on the weak was an ironclad law. However, Bai Yu was born in the three realms, and he had also been the #1 god of war in the Immortal realm. What he hated the most was the Immortals and gods oppressing the ordinary people who had nothing. Whenever he encountered such a thing, he would never show any mercy. Even after Bai Yu became a pillar, he would never let his watchers interfere with the lives of ordinary civilizations. And now, The events at the Skywalker's quarry successfully made Bayu's killing intent toward the Oracle grow stronger. Chapter 348, Ichi. Just as Bayu was observing the situation in the quarry from the edge, a commotion broke out in the northeast corner of the quarry. Bayu looked towards the direction of the commotion, and he saw a skinny, pointed-eared teenager standing in front of a battered, middle-aged woman. He bared his teeth and glared at the whip-wielding supervisor, refusing to give way. "I think you've been itching for a beating, kid." The supervisor cursed angrily and lashed out at the pointed-eared teenager's face with his whip. Slap! The whip flew across, blood and flesh flying. The pointed-eared teenager didn't even blink. He took the whip directly, his whole face torn apart by the barbed whip. "Yo, I see you're still putting on a tough act. I want to see how many of my whips your puny body can handle." The supervisor saw that the pointed-eared teenager didn't even blink. He raised his whip again and lashed out at the pointed-eared teenager once again. Slap! The barbed whip directly tore off the teenager's clothes and flesh on his chest, revealing the white bones. The scarlet blood stained the teenager's tattered shirt. The surrounding slaves couldn't bear to see the teenager in this state, but due to the power of the supervisor, they didn't dare to stand up for the teenager. In this quarry, the supervisors were emperors, and the lives of the slaves were not even as valuable as weeds. There was only one end for those who resisted the supervisors, and that was death. There was no other outcome. The pointed-eared teenager still didn't make a sound. He blocked the middle-aged woman and didn't move. The middle-aged woman behind him was crying with heartbreak, trying to persuade the teenager. "Chi, let it go. It's my fault. Please, don't provoke the supervisor. Don't sacrifice yourself." The pointed-eared teenager didn't respond to the middle-aged woman. He glared at the supervisor and said, "If you want to kill my mother, you'll have to step over my dead body first. You little bastard. You think you're somebody just because you took 2 of my whips without falling?" Upon hearing the words of the middle-aged woman and the pointed-eared teenager, the supervisor didn't show any empathy. Instead, he sneered and said, "Okay, today I'll be benevolent. I'll send you mother and son to your deaths together." After saying that, the supervisor raised the whip in his hand and poured his spiritual energy into it, and then fiercely lashed it at the pointed-eared teenager. "You're a member of the Skywalkers. You have no small amount of cultivation, but you're finding pleasure in torturing ordinary mortals who have no cultivation. Do you even have any shame?" At this moment, Bayu's voice echoed in the surrounding area. Then Bayu appeared next to the supervisor and grabbed the supervisor's whip hand with one hand, asking calmly, "Who are you? How dare you interfere with my business?" Seeing that Bayu had suddenly come out to spoil the situation, the supervisor cursed at Bayu. He also twisted his arm, trying to break free from Bayu's grasp. However, no matter how much he struggled, Bayu's hand didn't move. It was like a pair of iron pliers, gripping the supervisor's wrist tightly. Bayu's appearance had also attracted the attention of all the slaves and supervisors nearby. In an instant, a large number of eyes were fixed on Bayu. They were curious who this mysterious man wearing a mask was. Most of the slaves here were ordinary people. Only a small number had cultivation, and their strength was not high. It was impossible for them to have someone like Bayu. And in the Skywalkers, the supervisors had never heard of any figure wearing a mask like Bayu's. As for intruders who had infiltrated Skywalk Peak, as soon as the supervisors had this thought, they immediately dismissed it. This was their Skywalker's headquarters, with the Oracle sitting in command. How could there be any external intruders? The supervisor whose wrist was gripped by Bayu realized that Bayu's strength was above his own. He also couldn't tell Bayu's background, so he became a bit of a coward. His tone softened instantly. He said to Bayu, "B brother, we can talk this out. I'm working right now. Your job is to bully the weak?" Bayu looked at the supervisor in front of him with his deep eyes and asked again, "What are you talking about?" "I'm just managing the slaves normally." The supervisor laughed. "The slaves here are just a bunch of trash who are worse than pigs and dogs. Their minds are twisted and there are so many of them. If they are not strictly controlled, the entire Skywalk Peak would descend into chaos." As soon as the supervisor said those words, boundless anger appeared in the eyes of the surrounding slaves. But under long-term oppression, the slaves dared not express their anger. Under the suppression of absolute power, all the slaves in the quarry combined probably wouldn't be able to defeat the supervisors in the quarry. And the supervisors here were just the lowest-ranking members of the Skywalkers, and their strength was considered to be at the bottom. With such a huge gap in strength, in the eyes of the slaves, their resistance was meaningless, so everyone had resigned themselves to their fate. Only the pointed-eared teenager, after hearing the supervisor's words, shouted, "Why do you say that we're trash? It was you bastards who invaded our homeland, plundered our land, and enslaved us. You bastards are the real trash. If you weren't relying on the power of the Skywalkers and enjoying a lot of resources, you wouldn't even be as good as one of my toes. You little bastard. You're asking for death." The supervisor, whose wrist was still grabbed by Baiyu, became so angry after hearing the words of the pointed-eared teenager that his face turned red. He gathered energy in his other hand, preparing to shatter the pointed-eared teenager's soul. Crack. The sound of bones shattering rang out. However, just as the supervisor was gathering his power, Baiyu used his 5 fingers and crushed the supervisor's arm bone, making the supervisor let out a pig-like scream. The other supervisors nearby changed their expressions, calling for reinforcements and taking out their weapons, watching Baiyu with wariness. Baiyu ignored the surrounding supervisors. He casually threw the supervisor he was holding onto the ground. Bang! The ground instantly cracked. The supervisor was slammed into a giant crater, breaking most of the bones in his body. All the slaves and the supervisors around were frightened by the power that Baiyu had displayed. What kind of monster was this? Baiyu didn't look at the supervisor who was dying in the crater. He turned to the blood-covered, pointed-eared teenager and asked, "What's your name?" The pointed-eared teenager was obviously also frightened by Baiyu's power, but he still managed to maintain his composure. After hearing Baiyu's question, he honestly replied, "Ichi." "Ichi, okay. I've memorized it." Baiyu nodded slightly, and then said to Ichi, "Your performance was very courageous, comparable to a mortal standing against a god. Your courage is commendable. Therefore, I can give you a chance now." "What opportunity?" Ichi quickly asked. He wasn't stupid. After Baiyu saved him, he knew Baiyu's appearance was probably the last chance for him to turn his life around. Naturally, he had to seize this opportunity at all costs. Baiyu looked at Ichi calmly. He conjured a dagger in his hand and presented it to Ichi. He then stepped aside, revealing the dying supervisor in the crater to Ichi. Baiyu said calmly, "Do you dare to kill him with your own hands?" Chapter 349. The Choice. Should we kill the overseer with our own hands? The moment Baiyu said these words, the expressions of all the slaves around them changed drastically. In this quarry, the overseers were like emperors. For these slaves, not to mention killing an overseer, even the slightest action that displeased them could lead to a beheading. Although there had been many enlightened individuals who had resisted in the oppressive environment of the quarry and had launched rebellions, no matter how united the slaves were, they could not match the suppression of absolute power. Each massive riot could be easily quelled by just 1 or 2 overseers. Over time, the slaves of the quarry had resigned themselves to fate and completely given up resisting. Killing an overseer was an unimaginable act for the slaves here. Now that Baiyu had proposed it, a tremendous wave was stirred within the quarry. The other overseers, after hearing Baiyu's words, also raised their weapons and warned Baiyu and Ichi, "I advise you to give up resisting. Reinforcements are coming soon. If you dare lay a hand on an overseer, you will absolutely face death." All the overseers present were also afraid now. After all, with a mysterious powerhouse like Baiyu present, if Ichi really killed the overseer in the pit, then any of them could become the next victim. Like the loss of teeth, the overseers could not simply stand by and watch their colleague die. At this moment, Ichi was tightly gripping the dagger in his hands, his body trembling slightly, whether from excitement or fear was unclear. Baiyu just stood aside, silently watching Ichi, not uttering a word, waiting for Ichi to make his own decision. Although Ichi's performance in front of the overseer before had been remarkable, whether Baiyu would truly invest his time and effort to nurture Ichi still depended on his decision now. To stand up and stand before one's mother was a kind of courage. But to kill an overseer required immense fortitude. As Ichi held the knife, the eyes of everyone in the quarry were focused on him, creating a huge pressure on him. Driven by this immense pressure, Ichi began to walk towards the overseer lying in the pit. Seeing Ichi take action, the surrounding overseers became even more fearful and warned again. If you dare kill an overseer, all the slaves in the entire quarry will be buried with him. Think carefully. As the overseer's words were shouted, Ichi's body shook, and boundless fear appeared on his face. The slaves around him also became anxious and quickly advised Ichi, give up. Killing an overseer is meaningless. This is Skywalker Peak. We can't escape. That's right, Ichi. Even if you kill that overseer, it's just a moment of pleasure, but you'll drag us all down with you. Ichi, think about your mother. For the slaves who had lost hope, they no longer wished to be reborn. They just needed to survive. If they could live one more day, they would take it. Seeing that their threats were working, the overseers continued to incite the slaves to apply pressure on Ichi, preventing him from acting. In the overseer's eyes, as long as their colleague in the pit was not dead, Baiyu would not turn his attention to them, and they could wait in peace for reinforcements to arrive. Baiyu simply watched coldly as the overseers continually stirred the slaves to put pressure on Ichi, without any intention of interfering. Under immense pressure, Ichi looked back at his mother and then at Baiyu, a sense of confusion appearing in his eyes. He didn't mind dying, but he was afraid if he dragged his mother into it. The overseer in the pit had recovered a bit of energy. He struggled to raise his head, looked at Ichi holding the knife, a look of mockery flashing in his eyes. However, he was also clever. He didn't provoke or stimulate Ichi, but silently lowered his head, secretly recovering his energy. He only needed to wait for reinforcements to arrive, and then, whether it was Baiyu or Ichi, he would retaliate 100-fold. Countless voices poured into Ichi's ears, making his breathing heavier and heavier. Coupled with the fact that Ichi had suffered severe injuries, his consciousness was now beginning to blur. If I die here like this, would everyone be saved? Suddenly, this thought flashed through Ichi's mind, and the hand holding the dagger loosened slightly, gradually lowering his arm. Seeing this, Baiyu slightly shook his head, a trace of disappointment flashing in his eyes. He could see that Ichi was now planning to escape the reality of his choice by dying. However, just when Baiyu thought that Ichi was going to give up, the middle-aged woman behind Ichi suddenly shouted, "Cheer! Believe in your own choice, just like your father taught you." As soon as the middle-aged woman spoke, Ichi's body shook violently, and his eyes suddenly opened. He suddenly remembered the way his father, with his thin and weak body, stood tall between heaven and earth when the Skywalkers had demanded them all to give up resistance. Although it was like a moth flying into a flame, it was also an unyielding spirit. Back then, they didn't have the help of a mysterious powerhouse like Baiyu. "Even if I give up, you bastards won't let us go. Rather than that, we might as well gamble on a glimmer of hope." Remembering his father's back, Ichi gripped his dagger. There was no longer any confusion in his eyes, and he began to sprint towards the overseer in the pit. Not good. Seeing Ichi rushing towards the overseer in the pit, the expressions of the surrounding overseers changed drastically. Immediately, an overseer threw out a whip to try and stop Ichi. However, every overseer who tried to move would explode into a mist of blood on the spot, scaring the other overseers into Bugantu. Ichi ran faster and faster. He remembered his hometown that had been scorched by flames, and boundless anger surged into his eyes. I'll kill you, scum!" Ichi roared, jumped into the pit with a dagger in hand, and with his injured body, stabbed fiercely at the overseer in the pit. The overseer lying in the pit did not expect that Ichi would actually dare kill him. At this moment, he did not just wait to be killed. He immediately used the strength he had just gathered to launch a sneak attack on Ichi, trying to shatter Ichi the moment the dagger pierced him. But Ichi was ready to die. He ignored the overseer's sneak attack and stabbed the dagger towards the overseer's head. The dagger easily pierced the overseer's head, and the overseer's palm, which contained domineering spiritual energy, stopped right next to Ichi's head, unable to land. Everyone present fell silent at the sight of the overseer with a pierced head. Clap, clap, clap. At this moment, Baiyu clapped his hands and said with a smile to Ichi, "You have guts." "Sir." Ichi, covered in blood, looked at Baiyu, his body still trembling slightly. This was the first time he had ever killed anyone. Baiyu smiled at Ichi and said, "I like you a lot. Are you interested in joining my team?" Chapter 350. Reinforcements. Jay join your team? Hearing Baiyu's words, Ichi was stunned for a moment before finally reacting. He immediately knelt down to Baiyu in excitement and said, "Thank you, sir, for taking me in." Ichi dared to attack the overseer because he was gambling on a sliver of a future. And now that Baiyu had spoken, it meant that his gamble had paid off. In Ichi's opinion, since Baiyu dared to say this, it meant that Baiyu must have enough strength to suppress the overseers in the quarry. At this time, Ewing descended from the sky, landing in front of Baiyu and whispered, "Mr. Bai, the quarry's reinforcements are here." "It's fine. I'm waiting for them." Baiyu smiled and then took out a jade bottle and threw it to Ewing, saying, "Apply the ointment inside to that kid. His injuries will kill him if he doesn't get treatment." "Yes." Ewing received the ointment, and without asking further about Baiyu's plans, he immediately went into the pit to help Ichi up. He said enviously, "Kid, you're lucky. You've actually gained Mr. Bai's favor. You're going to soar from now on. Come on, let's go to the side to heal your injuries first." Ichi, "Sir, can you bring my mother along?" Hearing Ichi's words, Yu-ing was stunned for a moment, then looked at the dying middle-aged woman not far away and nodded with a smile. "All right, there's enough ointment. Thank you." As Yu-ing took Ichi and his mother to an open area to heal, the overseers who were resting near the quarry, as well as some Skywalker members who were patrolling nearby, had also arrived late at the northeast corner of the quarry. For a moment, this northeast corner became lively. The other slaves in the quarry, seeing a large number of Skywalkers arriving from outside the quarry, had expressions of fear on their faces. They all knelt down and prostrated themselves, not even daring to lift their heads. Fear had already taken control of their bodies. And the overseers, after seeing the reinforcements arrive, had also become bolder. While surrounding Baiyu, they shouted, "Everyone surround these madmen. Don't let them escape." Ichi, who was receiving treatment, saw the overseers surround them and was about to get up, but Ewing pressed him down. "Don't move. Your wounds will reopen." Ichi said anxiously, "But now, you're almost dead yourself. Do you still have time to worry about others?" "Don't worry. Mr. Bai will handle it. You sit there obediently and don't move. Wait until I heal your injuries first," Ewing said calmly, as if he wasn't worried about something happening to them. Perhaps Ewing himself didn't realize that after following Baiyu for a while, he instinctively felt that as long as Baiyu was present, no matter how big the problem was, it wouldn't be a problem for Baiyu. This kind of mentality would have been absolutely unimaginable for Yu-ing before he met Baiyu. What happened here? Why is the smell of blood so thick in the air? At this time, a man over 2 meters tall, wearing heavy armor, led a group of Skywalker members also in armor. An overseer had asked. Seeing the heavy armored man come over, the overseer head quickly pointed at Baiyu and replied to the heavy armored man, "Sir Ma, our quarry was running smoothly when suddenly a masked fellow came and attacked us without any warning. Not only did he disrupt our work progress, but he also instigated the slaves to kill our overseers, causing an extremely negative impact. It's simply lawless." After hearing the overseer's words, Sir Ma looked at Baiyu, his eyes slightly narrowed. "I heard that a masked Monitor 7 Pillars came to Skywalker Peak. Are you that Baiyu?" Baiyu smiled and said, "It seems I'm quite famous. Then there's no need to introduce myself." Sir Ma said coldly, "Baiyu, as a Monitor 7 Pillars, being able to enter Skywalker Peak is already the Oracle Lord's grace upon you. Yet you still dare to cause trouble in the quarry. Do you really think this is your Monitor's territory, and that we wouldn't dare to touch you?" "Baiyu, I just simply dislike seeing the weak being bullied. These overseers, one by one, their cultivation is at least at the celestial immortal level, yet they find pleasure in bullying mortals. What dog shit celestial immortals?" Sir Ma scoffed, I don't understand your kind of logic. The slaves in this quarry are just our spoils of war. We can deal with them as we see fit. It's not up to you, a monitor, to talk. By you, considering that you're a guest of us Skywalkers, I don't want to make things difficult for you. If you obediently give up resistance, I'll just detain you and wait for the Oracle Lord to give his orders. How about that? Although Sir Ma's attitude towards Baiyu was very rude, he was not a fool. Baiyu could become a Monitor 7 Pillars, which meant his strength was definitely comparable to the codenamed level experts among the Skywalkers. He was just a small squad leader, responsible for the usual vigilance of Skywalker Peak. With his status and ability, he could barely bully the overseers. But if he fought with a Monitor 7 Pillars with codenamed level strength, he could only wait for death. Baiyu just smiled mockingly at Sir Ma's words, saying, I'm curious, Sir Ma, with such a small force, what makes you think you can cause trouble for me here? I could give you a chance to leave with your people and not be a nuisance. Baiyu, don't forget, this is Skywalker Peak. After hearing Baiyu's words, Sir Ma's face became very interesting, and he shouted at Baiyu. He didn't understand why Baiyu, alone in enemy territory, still dared to be so arrogant. Where did Baiyu get his confidence? Wasn't he afraid of death? Seeing that Sir Ma did not intend to seize the opportunity, Baiyu shook his head slightly, saying, I gave you a chance, but you didn't seize it. Well then, I still have things to do later, so I have to harvest your lives in advance. Anyway, this is what you deserve. As Baiyu finished speaking, a peculiar array unfolded from him as the center, covering everyone in the quarry. As Baiyu's array unfolded, Sir Ma sensed the terrifying killing intent contained within the array. He also revealed a look of panic in his eyes. What kind of power is this? Sir Ma retreated repeatedly, continuing to request reinforcements while yelling at Baiyu. Baiyu, this is Skywalker Peak. You dare to act wildly here. Aren't you afraid you won't be able to get out alive? I'm sorry, I really don't have that concern. Baiyu smiled at Sir Ma, and the array instantly marked all the Skywalker members inside it. Behind each Skywalker, a mark appeared, counting down to their death. Instantly, the quarry became chaotic again. Chapter 351. The Power of Curses. In the quarry, the Skywalkers looked at the marks on their backs, fear welling up in their hearts. They could sense their current situation was extremely perilous. Sir Ma, feeling death approaching, was no longer as tough as he had been at first. He immediately said to Baiyu, Mr. Bai, please don't get excited. It was all a misunderstanding. Although Sir Ma was convinced that after killing them, Baiyu himself wouldn't survive, from the looks of things, Baiyu was like a madman who acted without regard for the consequences. In this situation, Sir Ma didn't want to die here without understanding what was happening. However, it was too late for Sir Ma to back down now. The mark on his back was growing brighter and more unstable, looking like it could explode at any moment. The group of Skywalkers felt the increasingly scorching marks on their backs. Their legs began to tremble, and boundless fear surfaced on their faces. The group called out in trembling voices, Bai! Bang! The marks suddenly exploded. All the Skywalkers in the quarry, including the overseers, were engulfed by the exploding marks at that instant, not even a speck left behind. In an instant, Baiyu had cleared out all the Skywalkers in the quarry. The entire quarry was deathly silent. The remaining slaves were all stunned, staring blankly at Baiyu, their minds blank. Those Skywalker members were like gods in the eyes of these slaves. And now, those high and mighty gods were being slaughtered like chickens and ducks. The immense power displayed by Baiyu was like a spark that lit up the dark hearts of the slaves, allowing them to see hope again. Ying, who had finished treating Ichi and his mother, walked up to Baiyu, bowed slightly, and said with concern, Mr. Bai, what happened in the quarry today cannot be hidden. I'm afraid. Baiyu had just killed hundreds of Skywalker members, and those Skywalker members would definitely request reinforcements. It wouldn't be long before more Skywalker members arrived at the quarry. At that point, if Baiyu killed those Skywalkers as well, it would probably cause a huge shock throughout the Skywalkers. Baiyu would become the target of public criticism, and he would no longer have a chance to meet the Oracle. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Yu, of course, had thought of all the things Ying was worried about. He said, I have already blocked the Skywalker's request for reinforcements. Other Skywalkers outside the quarry won't know what's going on here for the time being. Hearing Yu's words, Ying finally breathed a sigh of relief and said, Mr. Bai is wise. Then, Yu looked at the other slaves in the quarry, whose eyes were filled with shock and fervor. Using spiritual power to amplify his voice, he said, I am not a god come to save you, and you don't need to expect that I will lead you out of the sea of suffering. As soon as Yu said these words, many slaves in the quarry's eyes dimmed, with no light left in them. The hope in their hearts was shattered once again. Yu continued, however, although I won't save you, I will give you a chance to save yourselves. With that, a ball of curse marks appeared in Yu's palm. Then, a large number of curses flew out and coalesced into a huge black ball of curses at the center of the quarry, emitting an ominous aura. All the slaves in the quarry looked at the black ball, which contained endless curses and was pulsating like a heart, instinctively feeling fear and dread. The curse heart in the center of the quarry can unleash all your potential in a short amount of time, granting you immense power that is enough for you to fight against the Skywalkers who will soon come. Of course, during the process of gaining power, you will suffer a pain that is hundreds of times worse than anything you have experienced in the quarry. And if you cannot endure, you will pay the price with your lives. Whether you want to accept the power of curses and unleash your potential is your choice. I won't force you. As soon as Yu said these words, the entire quarry fell silent. All the slaves looked at the curse heart in the center of the quarry, their eyes a mixture of desire and fear. They wanted to gain power, but they were also afraid of being devoured by the curse. The extreme pain was not something that ordinary people could bear. At this time, Ying was also dumbfounded. He stared at the curse heart in the center of the quarry with an unbelievable expression, a huge wave rising in his heart. The aura emitted by the curse heart, which contained a large number of curses, was exactly the same as the cursed dead zone. Did Mr. Bai control the cursed dead zone after visiting it? Ying looked at Yu, no longer knowing how to describe the shock in his heart. Just as everyone fell silent, Ichi suddenly stood up and said firmly, I'll go first. Cheer! The middle-aged woman cried out in surprise at Ichi's words, but before she could stop him, Ichi firmly walked towards the curse heart in the center of the quarry. For a moment, all the slaves' eyes focused on Ichi, and they subconsciously held their breaths. Yu, watching Ichi's resolute figure walking towards the curse heart, could not help but smile. Then, he reminded him, Ichi, think it through carefully. If you cannot bear the pain, you will die. No one can save you. I have thought it through. Rather than waiting helplessly for death, I might as well try my luck here. Ichi didn't look back. He walked to the curse heart, took a deep breath, and then placed his hand on the curse marks on the surface of the curse heart. In an instant, a large number of curse marks attached themselves to the surface of Ichi's body. Ichi's face became distorted, and he began to scream. The painful sight immediately made many slaves who had been eager to try retreat. However, even as he endured the endless pain brought by the curses, Ichi still had no intention of backing down. Instead, he continued to push his palm further into the curse heart to come into contact with more curse marks. Ichi's aura began to soar wildly. The curse marks that appeared all over his body even made the entire quarry shake violently. And the way Ichi gritted his teeth and persevered shocked many of the younger slaves. Immediately, many young people who were unwilling to remain slaves forever stood up and ran towards the curse heart in the center of the quarry, imitating Ichi and placing their hands on the surface of the curse heart. Ah! For a moment, screams rang out one after another. Many slaves instantly turned to dust because they could not bear the power of the curse. However, some people managed to persevere. Through the curse marks on the surface of their bodies, their strength increased rapidly, and the success of those slaves inspired more slaves. Many others stood up as well. For them, staying in the quarry was also waiting for death. Now that they had a chance to be reborn, even if the price of failure was being crushed to pieces, it was worth the gamble. Seeing more and more slaves in the quarry stand up, Bai couldn't help but curve his lips into a smile and said to Ying, "They have already stood up. Let's go. Ying, take me to see the next place." Chapter 352. The Treasury. As Ying led Bai away from the quarry, he felt completely dazed. Since Bai came to Skywalker Peak, he had only taken Bai to two places, his residential area and the quarry where the slaves were kept. As a result, in the residential area, Bai had directly killed the codenamed Expert 13. In the quarry, he had killed all the overseers, and even given the slaves the power to resist, planting a huge, hidden danger for the Skywalker's rule. Bai had only been at Skywalker Peak for a short time, yet he had already stirred up two major incidents one after another. Ying didn't dare to imagine what Bai would do next. "Ying, do the Skywalkers have a place like a treasury or a scripture pavilion?" After leaving the quarry, Bai asked the pensive Ying. Hearing Bai's words, Ying's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He asked Bai in a trembling voice, Mr. Bai, I'm not qualified to enter those places." "So there are such places, then?" Bai raised an eyebrow. Ying sighed slightly and nodded. "Yes, there are the Star Pavilion and the Treasury in Skywalker Peak. The Star Pavilion stores all the Skywalker's cultivation techniques and martial skills. You need to enter by relying on contribution points. To borrow those techniques and skills, you also need the corresponding level and pay a large number of contribution points. I have only ever entered the first floor, where I learned some low-level techniques. As for the Treasury, it contains a large number of divine weapons and all kinds of natural treasures. Only the big shots at the codenamed level can go there to choose treasures." Bai said, "Then take me to the Treasury first." He had already learned the Oracle's great transformation of heaven and earth technique. That technique should be the most advanced technique in the Star Pavilion. He estimated that other cultivation techniques wouldn't be of much help to him. As for the Treasury, the Skywalkers had roamed the void for many years, plundering countless orderly worlds, so they must have obtained countless treasures. Bai could use those treasures to improve his cultivation and strength, and at the same time, upgrade his own divine weapons. Comparing the two places, the Treasury had a higher priority than the Star Pavilion. Hearing Bai's words, Ying could not help but smile bitterly and said, "Mr. Bai, it's not that I don't want to take you to the Treasury. There are powerful barriers around there, and the Keeper is a terrifying existence even stronger than 13. Even if we go, we won't be able to get in at all, and we'd risk being exposed." To Ying's words, Bai just waved his hand and said, "It doesn't matter. You just take me nearby, and I'll take care of the rest." Now that Bai possessed the Void Spirit Clan's Omni-World insight, he could ignore all barriers and shields. The barrier outside the Treasury was nothing to him. As for the powerful Keeper, Bai had come to Skywalker Peak with the intention of killing the Oracle. Since Bai dared to take on the strongest person in the Skywalkers, he would naturally not be afraid of a mere Keeper. Seeing that Bai was determined to go, Ying knew that he couldn't stop him. He sighed, "Okay, I'll take Mr. Bai there, but Mr. Bai, please be careful. The Treasury's barrier has an extremely strong sensing ability. If we get too close, we will be discovered, so we can only look from afar. Just go directly." "Yes." Ying bowed slightly to Bai, and then led Bai to the outside of a huge palace. Standing in a forest, Ying pointed to the palace in the distance and said to Bai, "Mr. Bai, that is the Treasury. The entire Treasury is shrouded in a barrier, so we can only look at it from afar." Outside the Treasury, in addition to the powerful barrier, there were also a large number of heavily armed Skywalkers patrolling around. A guard with a cultivation base similar to Ying was stationed every 10 steps. The security was extremely tight. Bai looked at the Treasury in the distance and nodded. The Treasury is so heavily guarded. It seems that there are indeed valuable treasures inside. It's worth exploring. Seeing that Bai really intended to infiltrate the Treasury, Ying's pupils suddenly contracted as he said in alarm, "Mr. Bai, there is a barrier outside the Treasury. The barrier has no blind spots, and once touched, the Keeper will find out. There are also a large number of Skywalker reinforcements outside. It's impossible to get in. You just stay here and make sure you aren't discovered." Ignoring Ying's warning, Bai leaped up and quietly flew towards the Treasury. "Bai." Ying wanted to call out to Bai, but it was too late. Baiyu used his superb movements to bypass all the guards on the periphery and reach out his hand to touch the treasury's barrier. Seeing Baiyu directly touch the barrier with his hand, Ewing couldn't help but slap his forehead in anxiety. It's all over now. The treasury is not like the quarry. Once the keeper is alarmed, then? However, Ewing was halfway through his sentence when he saw Baiyu pass directly through the barrier and enter the treasury without any obstacles. Ewing saw that incredible scene, so shocked that his mouth hung open and his eyes almost popped out. How was that possible? For a moment, Ewing even thought there was something wrong with the barrier. If he wasn't incapable of getting past the guards outside the treasury himself, he would also want to go to the barrier and try it. At the same time, after entering the treasury, Baiyu's gaze was immediately captivated by the dazzling array of natural treasures. As expected of the Skywalker's treasury, there isn't a single ordinary item inside. Baiyu's eyes lit up. He glanced through the treasures stored in the treasury and found that every single item here was priceless. The quality of some divine weapons was even superior to Baiyu's own divine weapons. It seems I've come to the right place. Oracle, you once wanted to seize everything from me. So now, I'll take a little interest first. That should be okay, right? Baiyu chuckled to himself, walking towards a purple crystal stone suspended on a display stand. Every single treasure in the treasury had its own special barrier for protection. Even if someone managed to break through the outer defenses, they would ultimately only be able to stare at a pile of treasures helplessly when faced with the countless barriers inside. However, these barriers were as good as non-existent to Baiyu, who possessed Omni-World Insight. Without any hesitation, Baiyu activated his Omni-World Insight, and his palm passed through the barrier without any obstruction, grasping the purple crystal stone. The moment Baiyu grasped the purple crystal stone, he heard a dragon's roar and felt an extremely vast amount of energy from within it. At this moment, Long Yao flew out of Baiyu's body and smiled at Baiyu. Master, this is a true dragon crystal, a treasure formed from the core of a fallen void dragon after death. The void dragons are a powerful race in the void, very rare in number. It's unknown whether there are even 100 void dragons left. I didn't expect there would be such treasures here. Master, if you don't mind, you can give the true dragon crystal to me. It can directly increase my strength. Of course, I don't mind. There are so many good things in here. Take whatever you want. Baiyu wasn't stingy at all, and directly gave the true dragon crystal to Long Yao. At this time, the curse worm also flew out, pointing to a black stone not far away that was inscribed with curse marks and asking Baiyu, Master, that is a curse stone, containing a unique curse. Can you give me that? Of course. Take whatever you want. Chapter 353, $0 Shopping. In the treasury, Baiyu acted as a generous host. After giving the true dragon crystal to Long Yao and the curse stone to the curse worm, he even called out Su Gu and Zhou, letting them choose whatever they wanted in the treasury, engaging in $0 shopping. With Baiyu's ability, Omni-World Insight, none of the barriers in the treasury were effective. Even Su Gu and Zhou could take whatever they set their sights on, without any obstacles. In less than a quarter of an hour, Baiyu and the others had emptied half of the treasury. Not only were Baiyu and the others armed to the teeth, but Baiyu even melted down a large number of top-tier divine weapons and immortal artifacts, strengthening his own divine weapons one by one, greatly increasing their power. However, even with Baiyu's frantic looting, half of the treasures in the treasury still remained, and there were still many secret treasures that had not been discovered. I didn't expect the Skywalkers to have such a deep foundation. It's actually still a technical job to empty everything here. Baiyu sighed, then reached his hand into a barrier again, took out a fairy grass dripping with scarlet blood inside, and put it into the demon refining pot to be refined. Perhaps the keeper was too confident in the barriers of the treasury. Baiyu and the others had been active in the treasury for a long time, yet the keeper was nowhere to be seen. Su Gu's eyes were glowing at this point. He stared at the secret treasures in the depths of the treasury and said excitedly, Baiyu, stop talking nonsense. Open the barriers inside first. Let's empty this treasury quickly. No problem. Baiyu smiled and immediately activated his Omni-World Insight, causing all the barriers in the treasury to become ineffective. He said, "Everyone, move quickly. Don't leave even a single hair for the Skywalkers." Of course. The others laughed and happily began another round of $0 shopping, while Bai Yu and the others were looting the remaining treasures in the treasury. At the main entrance of the treasury, a sloppy old man in coarse clothes was sitting on the stone steps, leaning against a pillar and leisurely drinking wine. This old man was so reckless in the Skywalkers' headquarters, but none of the Skywalkers around him dared to find trouble with the old man. Instead, everyone looked at the sloppy old man with reverence. The reason for this was simple. The sloppy old man was one of the 5 elders of the Skywalkers and the keeper of the treasury. The keeper's strength could rank among the top 10 of all the Skywalkers' experts. He had an extremely high status in the Skywalkers due to his terrifying combat power. Even experts at the codenamed level had to be polite and respectful in front of the keeper. Moreover, except for the Oracle, no one among the Skywalkers knew the keeper's true identity. No one had ever seen the keeper use his full strength. The Skywalkers only knew that the keeper liked to drink, and that he never went anywhere except the treasury, guarding it day after day for 10,000 years. There was even a rumor among the Skywalkers that the keeper had always been hiding his power, and once he used his full strength, his combat power could rank in the top 3 of the Skywalkers. And it was precisely because the keeper was stationed in the treasury that the treasury had never had a problem for many years. The Oracle also trusted the keeper's abilities very much, so even though the keeper often drank during work hours, the Oracle was not at all worried about the treasury being stolen. At this time, a woman wearing gorgeous clothes and exuding an extremely powerful aura flew over from a distance and landed in front of the treasury. The guards in charge of guarding the treasury saw the woman appear, and they all respectfully bowed to her. "Greetings, Ninth Lord." "You don't need to bow, just do your own thing." Ninth replied to the guards with a smile, and then said to the keeper, "Old Xiao, I'm here to get the blood crystal flower this time." Hearing Ninth's words, the keeper, who was drinking, paused, then put down his wine gourd and looked at Ninth with a surprised expression. He asked, "Old man remembers that little Ninth. You only started practicing the blood sutra some time ago, right? Did you get to the point of needing the blood crystal flower so quickly?" Ninth smiled and said, "I was quite lucky. I got some opportunities in the void some time ago and had a breakthrough. I've reached a cultivation bottleneck and only need this last step. This is not something that can be achieved through luck." The keeper gave Ninth a deep look, then said, "Well, that blood crystal flower originally belonged to you. If you want to take it, I don't have the right to say anything." After speaking, the keeper threw a jade token to Ninth and said, "The blood crystal flower is on stand number 1032. As usual, you can only take the blood crystal flower. You can't touch any other collections in the treasury. Otherwise, you will face the consequences." "Of course I understand this rule. Thank you, Old Xiao." Ninth took the jade token, walked up the steps, and then pushed open the door of the treasury. With the jade token for protection, Ninth successfully passed through the treasury's barrier and entered the interior of the treasury. However, when Ninth walked into the treasury and saw the empty room, she was stunned on the spot, the smile on her face freezing. Seeing Ninth standing at the door in a daze, the keeper frowned slightly and urged, "What are you doing standing at the door? Hurry up and get the blood crystal flower. Don't delay my drinking." "Old Xiao." Ninth turned around stiffly and looked at the keeper in disbelief. She asked, "Did you move the treasury to another place?" "What do you mean?" Hearing Ninth's words, the keeper was taken aback. "The treasury has always been here. Why would I move it for no reason?" "If you didn't move the treasures in the treasury, then why is the treasury empty?" Ninth asked again. "Empty?" The keeper was shocked. He leaped up from the stone steps, pushed past Ninth, and rushed into the treasury. He only saw that the treasury was completely empty. It was even cleaner than his face. The keeper looked at the empty treasury with a shocked face. His mind was blank, and his body began to tremble slightly. In this treasury, all the places where the treasures were placed and the barriers were intact. But within the barriers, not a single treasure remained. How was that possible? Ninth also came to her senses at this moment. She looked at the keeper coldly and said, "Old Xiao, You wouldn't be embezzling from the treasury, would you? How could I embezzle from the treasury? Don't make false accusations. The keeper was also somewhat agitated at this point and yelled at Ninth. Ninth said coldly, "If you're not embezzling from the treasury, then where did all the treasures from the treasury go? You must know that all the barriers are intact. Old Xiao, you were the one who set up all the barriers in here. Throughout the entire Skywalker Peak, who else can take away the treasures without damaging the barriers except for you? This is definitely not me." The keeper was very clear that he had not stolen from the treasury, but he could not explain the current situation, so he could only weakly defend himself. However, in the next moment, the keeper immediately released his spiritual power and erected a barrier that enveloped the entire treasury. Seeing this, Ninth exclaimed in surprise, "Old Xiao, what are you doing?" The keeper's eyes flashed with a sharp light. He said coldly, "The treasury must not be robbed. Before all the treasures are found, everyone in the treasury is not allowed to leave." Chapter 354. Who stole the treasury? Seeing the killing intent that was hidden in the keeper's eyes, Ninth immediately realized the keeper's plan and said, "Old Xiao, I have only just arrived. Even if someone has stolen treasures, it definitely wasn't me. I don't want the blood crystal flower anymore. I have things to do later, so I have to leave first. I won't bother you with your investigation here. Old man has said that before the treasures are found, no one is allowed to leave." The keeper coldly glanced at Ninth. His cold aura made Ninth's body tremble. Ninth was very clear about the keeper's strength, and she knew that it would be foolish to turn against the keeper at this time. She stopped talking about leaving and instead asked the keeper, "Old Xiao, how do you plan to find the stolen treasures?" The keeper glanced over the empty treasury and said, "The outer barrier of the treasury is intact, and the restrictions protecting the treasures have not been touched. An old man recently entered the treasury to check, and at that time, the treasures were all safe and sound. But now, all the collections in the treasury have been stolen. There are only two possibilities. One possibility is that the thief relied on the Void Spirit Clan's talent, Omniworld Insight. The Void Spirit Clan can ignore any barrier. If someone from the Void Spirit Clan infiltrated the treasury, they could indeed steal the treasury's treasures without anyone knowing." Ninth said, "But the Void Spirit Clan was exterminated by us Skywalkers many years ago. The only princess is currently being sent to the primordial chaos. Where would the people of the Void Spirit Clan come from to steal? Even if there were, the people of the Void Spirit Clan wouldn't be able to enter Skywalker Peak. Keeper, then there is only the second possibility left. There is a mole among us. Someone secretly created a pass to my barrier and then, while Old Man went out to buy wine, they infiltrated the treasury and took all the treasures." Ninth asked, "Then in Old Zhao's opinion, who is most likely to be the mole?" The keeper looked at Ninth and said coldly, "Recently, the people who have taken things from the treasury and who have gotten close to me are only you and 13. Hearing the keeper's words, Ninth's pupil shrank suddenly. She quickly said, "Old Xiao, I definitely didn't do this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to the treasury to take the blood crystal flower. This still needs to be investigated. Before the truth comes out, you had better stay with Old Man," the keeper said lightly, completely ignoring Ninth's explanation. In fact, the keeper was very clear that the person who stole the treasury could not have been Ninth. He knew how strong Ninth was. Even if Ninth secretly hid the pass, with her strength, it would not be possible for her to infiltrate the treasury silently under his watch. However, the theft of the treasury was too serious, so serious that even the keeper could not bear it. You had to know that it was not just one or two treasures that were lost now, but all the treasures in the entire treasury were looted. This was a heavy blow to the entire Skywalker organization. If this matter were to leak out, the Oracle would be furious, and the keeper would also be responsible and would ultimately be unable to escape death. Therefore, after seeing that the treasury had been robbed, the keeper had already made up his mind. He would first do his best to search for the thief. If he could recover the treasures, that would be best, and everything could be treated as if nothing had happened. However, if he could not recover the treasures, the keeper planned to kill all the people who knew about the matter. and he would take advantage of the fact that the matter had not yet been exposed, and immediately defect from the Skywalkers and flee into the void to avoid the Oracle's pursuit. What had happened now had left the Keeper with no way out. Seeing that the Keeper no longer bothered to hide his killing intent, Ninth also began to think of countermeasures. At the same time, she said to the Keeper, "According to your guess, old Xiao, 13 has the greatest suspicion. Do you want me to bring him over to question him properly?" The Keeper said lightly, "Old man has already sent people to look for him. 13 will be here soon. Before that, you should check with old man in the treasury. Be careful not to do anything foolish. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if we all end up unhappy." Ninth could hear that the Keeper was warning her, so she could only nod her head and say helplessly, "Old Xiao, rest assured, I'll listen to everything you say. Before the truth comes out, I will definitely not leave the treasury. That's for the best." After seeing that Ninth was being obedient, the Keeper nodded slightly. Then, he turned his attention to the empty treasury and swept through it with his divine sense, trying to find some clues in the treasury. Ninth also used her divine sense to examine the treasury again inside. "This thief is very skillful. They didn't leave any traces in the treasury. We probably won't be able to find any clues here." The Keeper's expression grew more and more serious. The treasury had been plundered so cleanly, and the thief hadn't even left a trace of their aura behind. This meant that there was a very small chance that they would be able to recover the stolen treasures. Thinking of this, a killing intent arose in the Keeper's eyes. Ninth instantly felt a chill down her spine. Her life was in danger. Ninth quickly said, "Old Xiao, don't be agitated. 13 once massacred the Void Spirit Clan. I heard that there is a secret technique in the Primal Chaos that can transfer the unique talent of the Void Spirit Clan to others. Perhaps 13 has mastered this ability and was able to quietly infiltrate the treasury and take away the treasures." Ninth didn't care whether 13 was the real thief at this moment. She just needed to find a scapegoat to buy herself enough time. After hearing Ninth's words, the Keeper also subconsciously nodded his head and said, "Indeed, 13 is most likely the person who stole from the treasury. Ninth, old man has already used a barrier to envelop the entire treasury. After 13 arrives, you will assist me in suppressing him. We cannot let him escape." "Yes." Seeing that the Keeper had no intention of letting her leave at all, Ninth could only think of a way to survive while continuing to search for possible clues in the treasury. However, the treasury had already been cleaned out, and Baiyu was cautious by nature. He had already erased all their traces before leaving. Ninth's and the Keeper's efforts were destined to be in vain. Ninth and the Keeper wandered around the treasury several times, but still came up empty-handed, which made the two of them more and more anxious. At this moment, the Skywalker who had been secretly sent out by the Keeper staggered back. He said to the Keeper, "Old Xiao, we have done our best. 13 is completely ignoring us, and he won't come back to the treasury." The Keeper asked the Skywalker, "What did you say to 13? The Skywalker said, "I didn't say anything specific. I just said that old Xiao wanted to invite him to the treasury, but 13 said he had something to do and directly refused." Ninth immediately said, 13 doesn't dare to come to the treasury. There must be something wrong with his heart. Old Xiao, don't think about it. It must be 13 who stole from the treasury. Chapter 355. The Mask of the All-Changing Star-Lord. 13. The Keeper muttered 13's name, his face growing increasingly gloomy. In fact, after seeing the situation inside the treasury, coupled with the answers brought back by his subordinates, the Keeper had already concluded that 13 was the thief who had stolen from the treasury. Seeing that the Keeper had fallen into deep thought, Ninth immediately said, "Old Xiao, the one who stole from the treasury must be 13. Let's go and capture 13 immediately. If he runs away, then everything will be over." The Keeper came back to his senses and placed an even stronger barrier around the treasury. Then, he said to Ninth, "You have not cleared yourself of suspicion. You cannot leave the treasury until Old Man has captured 13. Seeing that the Keeper wanted to lock her in the treasury, Ninth's eyes changed slightly as she tried to persuade him again. "Old Xiao, take me with you. I can help you. If we join forces, we should be able to capture 13 easily. Old Man can do it alone. You stay here obediently. The keeper said coldly, and then ordered the other skywalkers in the treasury, keep an eye on Ninth. Without old man's orders, no one is allowed to leave the treasury. After speaking, the keeper turned into a gust of wind and left the treasury. Seeing that the keeper had left, Ninth's expression became even more unpleasant. She cursed in a low voice, "That old dog, he committed a mistake, and now he wants to kill me to cover it up. I'm having some terrible luck today." As Ninth spoke, she walked toward the entrance of the treasury. Seeing this, the other skywalkers quickly blocked Ninth's path and said, "Ninth Lord, old Xiao said that you cannot." "Get out!" Ninth roared, releasing a powerful force. The skywalkers blocking her path in the treasury were directly blasted away, crashing into the walls. Several skywalkers were instantly killed when their heart meridians were shattered. Seeing this, the other skywalkers all changed their expressions, no longer daring to stop Ninth. They retreated to the side, staying far away from Ninth. Ninth arrived at the keeper's barrier and said coldly, "You want to trap me here? How can I let you have your way? When I get out, I'll report what happened here to the Oracle. You, old Xiao, just wait for death." As she spoke, Ninth condensed a snow-white long sword with a freezing aura in her hand and slashed it fiercely at the barrier. Clang! The sword in Ninth's hand was flung away, and she was sent several steps back. This old guy's barrier is really tough. Ninth cursed angrily, unwilling to be trapped here. She pulled her weapon back into her hand and slashed at the barrier again. Ninth was once again thrown back. At this time, Baiyu was sitting on the beam above the treasury, leisurely watching Ninth constantly attack the barrier. Long Yao was sitting on the side, swinging her feet, and asked Baiyu, "Master, we've already emptied the treasury. Why are we still here?" Baiyu smiled and said, "It's rare to have a good show to watch. It would be a pity to miss it, wouldn't it?" Long Yao, "But didn't that keeper go to find 13? 13 is your puppet now, master. Wouldn't it be a pity if he were killed by the keeper?" Baiyu replied, "The keeper is a high-level combatant among the Skywalkers. If I want to take control of this organization, he must be removed. Otherwise, if he jumps out when we are dealing with the Oracle, it will still be a trouble for us. If we can sacrifice 113 and cause the Keeper and the entire Skywalker organization to become enemies, then we can reap the benefits. And in this way, we can put the blame for 13's death on the Keeper." Long Yao covered her mouth and laughed. "If the Keeper knew that he was being played by you, Master, he would probably be furious. The show is only just getting started. I found an interesting item in the treasury. It's perfect for us to use." Baiyu said with a smile, a human skin mask appearing in his hand. "What's that?" Long Yao couldn't help but ask when she saw the human skin mask in Baiyu's hand. "Baiyu, when I picked up this human skin mask, the label on it in the treasury said it was called the Mask of the All-Changing Star Lord. It seems that wearing this mask allows one to transform into anyone." With that, Baiyu took off the 7-pillar mask he was currently wearing and put on the Mask of the All-Changing Star Lord. The moment Baiyu put on the mask, his face, figure, and even his aura began to change dramatically. Soon, Baiyu transformed into the Keeper in front of Long Yao's shocked eyes. "Master, you!" Long Yao looked at Baiyu with an incredulous expression, exclaiming, "This mask is too incredible. If it weren't for my soul connection with Master, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to tell that the person now is you, Master." Baiyu smiled and said, "With you saying that, I can rest assured. You stay here and watch a show." After speaking, Baiyu used Omni-World Insight to leave the treasury, then used Omni-World Insight again to enter the treasury from the main gate. At this moment, Ninth, who was still trying to break the barrier, saw the Keeper return and her expression immediately changed. "Old Xiao, how did you?" Baiyu looked at Ninth coldly and said, "Old man said before, without old man's permission, no one is allowed to leave the treasury. Are you taking old man's words as wind in the ears?" Ninth quickly explained, "Old Xiao, you have misunderstood. I didn't mean to leave. I'm just bored, so I wanted to try out the new martial skill that I learned. After all, Old Xiao, your barrier is unparalleled. How could I possibly break it?" "Humph!" Baiyu snorted coldly, then said, "Old man has already found 13 and gotten an answer. 13 is the one who stole from the treasury, right?" Ninth said quickly, "Old Xiao, I told you that I was innocent. Can I leave the treasury now?" Quite the opposite. A cold light flashed through Bai Yu's eyes, and then, taking Ninth by surprise, he struck her in the stomach with a palm, blasting her away. Pooh! Ninth spat out a mouthful of blood and stared at Bai Yu in disbelief. "Old Xiao, what is this?" Bai Yu said, "I have already killed 13. There was nothing from the treasury on him or in his residence. In other words, the only person who stole from the treasury is you. Now, either return the treasures of the treasury or die here." Hearing Bai Yu's words, Ninth immediately understood Bai Yu's meaning and said in shock, "You, Old Xiao, you lost the treasures of the treasury, and now you want to kill everyone to silence them and flee while shirking responsibility. You know too much." Bai Yu laughed coldly and rushed toward Ninth. "How can I let you have your way?" Seeing Bai Yu rushing over, Ninth immediately shouted sharply, burning her life essence, and her aura suddenly erupted. Boom! Ninth unleashed a towering aura. Seeing this, Bai Yu flashed a hint of mockery in his eyes, and then immediately used his omni-world insight to open a gap in the Keeper's barrier. Chapter 356, Inciting Conflict. Ninth did not notice Bai Yu's subtle movements at all. At this moment, she had focused all her attention on Bai Yu's attack. Although Ninth was now risking everything by burning her life essence, and her combat power was more than doubled compared to her usual state, the Keeper had a very high position among the Skywalkers. His apparent strength was already ranked in the top 10, and rumors stated that his true combat power could reach the top 3. Facing such a powerful person, even if Ninth was starting to fight for her life, she had no confidence in defeating the Keeper. Everything she was doing now was to find a chance to escape. Bai Yu could naturally see what Ninth was thinking, but he did not intend to go too easy on her now. After all, he was now playing the Keeper, a man of extraordinary strength. If he allowed Ninth to escape easily, he would easily be exposed. But if he showed too much strength and directly killed Ninth in the treasury, then everything he was doing now would be meaningless. Therefore, what Bai Yu needed to do now was to give Ninth appropriate pressure, to make her escape from a situation that looked like she was dead for sure. This required a high level of acting skill and control over his own power. "Old Xiao, eat my sword." Ninth gripped her divine weapon in her hand and aimed for Bai Yu's vitals, suddenly stabbing toward him. Bai Yu, imitating the Keeper's expression that he had previously observed, said coldly to Ninth, "A mere trick. You dare show off in front of old man?" Bai Yu easily knocked away the divine weapon in Ninth's hand, formed his 5 fingers into a claw, and suddenly grabbed at Ninth's neck. Bai Yu's attack speed was extremely fast, and Ninth had lost her balance because her sword was flung away. At this moment, she could only watch helplessly as Bai Yu's palm grabbed at her. Crack! Bai Yu grabbed Ninth's neck, and in less than a tenth of a second, swept her whole body with his divine sense. After confirming the amount of force he needed, he smiled at Ninth and said, "You should go and die obediently. No one will know what happened here." Crack! As the words fell, Bai Yu exerted force with his 5 fingers, directly crushing Ninth's neck, and then threw her onto the ground like a piece of trash. If you have to blame something, blame your bad luck. The theft of the treasury must not be exposed, Bai Yu said in the tone of the Keeper, and then deliberately turned around, looking at the remaining Skywalkers in the treasury, making a posture to kill everyone on the spot. And at this moment, Ninth, whose neck had been crushed and who had lost her breath, suddenly opened her eyes. Her entire body transformed into a phoenix engulfed in flames. Aiming for the weakest point in the barrier around the treasury, she crashed into it with all her might. Bang! With the help of Bai Yu's omni-world insight, plus Ninth's own all-out effort, Ninth finally broke through the barrier outside the treasury and fled for her life. Seeing a large hole blasted through the barrier, Bai Yu was secretly delighted, but the expression on his face was incredibly twisted as he yelled angrily, "Damn you! Don't even think about escaping!" Bai Yu roared and immediately chased after Ninth. In the treasury, only a mess and stunned Skywalkers were left behind. Not long after Bai Yu and Ninth left, the Keeper, who had killed 13, rushed back to the treasury. Seeing that the Keeper had returned again, the remaining Skywalkers in the treasury all thought that the Keeper had already killed Ninth. They were terrified and repeatedly knelt down to the Keeper, begging for mercy. Master, spare us. However, at this time, after seeing that a large hole had been broken in his barrier, the Keeper's mind went blank and his body went cold. The Oracle would definitely know about the robbery of the treasury. At this moment, the Keeper's mind was filled with the scene of the Oracle questioning him. Then, his already gloomy face became even more twisted. You useless trash. You can't even keep an eye on a single person. The Keeper vented all of his anger and fear on all the Skywalkers who were present, immediately unleashing a towering aura. Boom! As the Keeper's power erupted, all the Skywalkers in the barrier, including the huge treasury, were instantly reduced to ashes. At this time, some distance away from the treasury, Ewing saw the treasury explode, his face pale with fear, and his whole body trembling. Mr. Bai, what exactly did you do in there? After Bai Yu went to the treasury, Ewing had been silently praying in his heart, hoping that nothing would happen to Bai Yu. After multiple barriers rose around the treasury, Yu Ying's heart began to become uneasy. When he saw Ninth fleeing from the treasury in a panic, the unease in his heart reached its peak. And after the treasury was bombed by the Keeper, despair had already set in for Yu Ying. Ewing stared at the treasury in the distance, fidgeting and muttering, "It's over! It's over!" They still ended up fighting, and Ninth even escaped. It's estimated that Mr. Bai is being held up by the Keeper now. If Ninth brings other experts to reinforce, can Mr. Bai hold on? I said a long time ago that the treasury is a Skywalker stronghold. Its importance cannot be compared to the quarry. Now Mr. Bai is in danger. What can I do? After all, I was the one who brought Mr. Bai in. Now that Mr. Bai is exposed, should I flee Skywalker Peak? What are you mumbling about? Just as Yu Ying was staring at the treasury and mumbling to himself, Bai Yu's voice suddenly sounded from behind him, scaring Yu Ying so much that he immediately turned around and knelt down, kowtowing, "Master, spare me. This has nothing to do with me. I don't know anything." Seeing that Yu Ying started kneeling and kowtowing without even looking, Bai Yu couldn't help but smile and say, "Did you think I was already dead?" At this time, Yu Ying recognized Bai Yu's voice. He looked up at Bai Yu with a look of surprise and said, "Mr. Bai, are you okay? What could happen to me?" Bai Yu smiled. "You deserve the greatest credit for this trip having such a big harvest." Seeing the happy look on Bai Yu's face, Yu Ying couldn't help but purse his lips and ask cautiously, "Mr. Bai, could I ask what you did inside the treasury?" "The entire treasury has been blown up." Bai Yu smiled and said, "I didn't do much. I just emptied all the treasures in the treasury." The Keeper couldn't accept it and broke down, and then he started fighting with Ninth. "Why you emptied all the treasures in the treasury?" Yu Ying thought that he had misheard and looked at Bai Yu in disbelief. The treasury had countless treasures. It was the result of all the Skywalker's accumulation over endless years. Any item inside could be a supreme treasure from some orderly world in the void, immeasurably valuable. And now, Bai Yu had emptied the entire treasury? Yu Ying couldn't even imagine what the Oracle's expression would be if he knew about this. Bai Yu didn't take it seriously and said to Yu Ying, "Let's go, Yu Ying, let's go to the next place." Where are we going? Yu Ying asked in a trembling voice. Bai Yu, where else? The Star Pavilion, of course. It will be a while before what happened at the treasury is exposed. We need to take advantage of this time to get some more benefits from the Skywalkers. And Mr. Bai, you are really? Hearing Bai Yu's words, Yu Ying felt as if his eyes had gone dark and the world was spinning around him. Chapter 357, The Star Pavilion. For the next period of time, Yu Ying's mind was in a daze. He didn't even know how he had arrived outside the Star Pavilion. The treasury was already in utter chaos, but because the Keeper had blocked the news, the Star Pavilion was still peaceful, completely unaware that major events had already occurred in Skywalker Peak. Unlike the treasury, the Star Pavilion was open to all Skywalkers. Even low-level Skywalkers like Yu Ying could enter the Star Pavilion. Yu Ying stood outside the Star Pavilion, watching the skywalkers coming and going through the main entrance, and reminded by you, Mr. Bai, entering the Star Pavilion requires verification of identity information. Every Skywalker member has a corresponding identity card. I can enter, but I'm afraid, Mr. Bai, there's no need to worry about that. Bai smiled and then scanned the plaza outside the Star Pavilion. Finally, his gaze fell on a lone Skywalker. Bai instantly moved over and, while no one was paying attention, directly knocked the Skywalker unconscious. He threw him into a deserted corner, and then used the mask of the all-changing Star Lord to disguise himself as that Skywalker before returning to Yu Ying's side. Bayu's series of actions were as smooth as flowing water and completed in one go. Seeing Bayu completely transformed into another person in such a short period of time, even his aura had changed. Yu Ying was somewhat dazed. He didn't come back to his senses for a while. If he hadn't seen Bayu doing these things with his own eyes, he wouldn't have recognized that the person in front of him was Bayu. Bayu smiled at Yu Ying and said, "Let's go. You can act as a guide for this Star Pavilion." After hearing Bayu's words, Yu Ying finally came back to his senses and quickly nodded to Bayu. "Why yes, I'll lead the way." After speaking, Yu Ying no longer hesitated and braced himself to walk towards the Star Pavilion. Yu Ying walked in front, and Bayu walked behind. The two of them walked together to the Star Pavilion's entrance. Yu Ying walked into the Star Pavilion without any mishaps, then turned around to look at Bayu, subconsciously holding his breath and clenching his fists. The barrier used to screen identities at the Star Pavilion was personally set up by the Oracle. Even the most skilled identity-hiding big shots among the Skywalkers would not be able to escape the screening of the Oracle's barrier. Yu Ying believed that Bayu's strength was incomparably powerful, but combat power and the ability to hide one's identity were two completely different things. If Bayu was exposed for disguising himself as a Skywalker member to sneak into the Star Pavilion, then things would probably be in serious trouble. Here it comes. Yu Ying stared at Bayu's steps. Sweat was pouring from his forehead, and time around him seemed to slow down. In Yu Ying's world, at this moment, it seemed as if only Bayu was left. And at this moment, Bayu, like other Skywalkers, calmly passed through the gate, not causing any vibration in the barrier. Bayu smiled and walked up to Yu Ying, patted Yu Ying on the shoulder, and transmitted his voice. "Yu Ying, I suggest you act a little more normal. With that thief-like expression of yours, it's hard not to attract attention." Hearing Bayu's voice transmission, Yu Ying was startled and completely came back to his senses. Only then did he notice that many Skywalkers were casting suspicious glances at him. Yu Ying quickly apologized. "Sorry, Mr. Bai, Bayu interrupted Yu Ying, saying, "There's no need to apologize. From now on, just maintain a normal attitude. If you can't control your emotions, I won't be able to take you with me anymore." "Yes." Yu Ying nodded repeatedly. He took a deep breath and continued to hypnotize himself to keep a normal attitude. After taking a few deep breaths, Yu Ying barely regained his composure and asked Bayu, "Mr. Bai, where do you want to go next? Are we going directly to the restricted area?" Bayu said, "Let's go to the area you can access first. I want to see what kind of techniques most Skywalkers practice." Bayu's ultimate goal was to take control of the Skywalker organization. Everything he was doing now was equivalent to grassroots research. After all, if he wanted to fully control the Skywalkers, he had to have an in-depth understanding of the entire organization. Yu Ying did not think as much as Bayu did. After hearing Bayu's instructions, he immediately walked towards the first floor of the Star Pavilion. Yu Ying had obviously been to the first floor of the Star Pavilion often. He skillfully led Bayu to the book storage area. As soon as Bayu entered the book storage area, he noticed that there were already many Skywalkers reading cultivation manuals there, and were also cultivating on the spot. Yu Ying pointed to the walls filled with manuals and introduced them to Bayu. "Mr. Bai, all the cultivation techniques here are ones we can practice. Although these techniques are the lowest level in the Star Pavilion, they are all top-level techniques in various orderly worlds. There is no need for contribution points to borrow the techniques inside the Star Pavilion, but if you want to take the techniques out, you need the corresponding contribution points. That's why you can see many people cultivating inside the Star Pavilion, so they can save contribution points. There's such a rule." Bayu walked to a wall, scanned the dazzling array of cultivation manuals, then randomly took one down and began to read it. This is. When Bai saw the contents of the manual in his hand, his brow furrowed slightly. He felt that the contents inside seemed somewhat familiar. Mr. Bai, is there something wrong? Seeing that Bai's expression was not right, Ying could not help but ask. Bai did not answer Ying. To verify his guess, he put the manual in his hand back where he found it, then took another one and began reading it. The second manual was completely different from the first. The first one was about body training, while the second one was about soul cultivation. However, Bai also saw familiar content in the second manual. Although the second manual and the first manual used different forms of expression, their core was the same. Having discovered this, Bai took out the third and fourth manuals. He discovered that all the techniques and martial arts he saw in the Star Pavilion had the shadow of the great transformation of heaven and earth technique. Having discovered all this, Bai then asked Ying, where did these cultivation manuals come from? Ying replied, a small portion was created at random by the Oracle Lord, for the Skywalker members to use as basic cultivation techniques, and most of them were plundered by the Skywalkers from various orderly worlds. However, because the rules of each orderly world are different, we Skywalkers may not be able to practice the techniques they use, so every technique in the Star Pavilion, even a piece of trash, will be personally compiled by the Oracle Lord. All the cultivation manuals in this Star Pavilion have passed through the hands of the Oracle Lord. That's the greatness of the Oracle Lord. Bai said, his intentions are truly vicious. After hearing Ying's answer, Bai already understood the Oracle's plan. It was likely that, in the Oracle's eyes, the entire Skywalker organization was nothing more than his chickens. All the people who had practiced the techniques in the Star Pavilion were the Oracle's backup puppets. Chapter 358. Everyone is a tool. The Oracle's intentions are vicious? Hearing Bai's words, Ying was startled. He could not understand what Bai meant. In his opinion, the Oracle built the Star Pavilion and provided cultivation techniques for all Skywalker members, which was an act of immense merit. A large part of the reason why many Skywalker members were willing to continue to stay in this hierarchical organization was that the Star Pavilion was open to all Skywalker members. As long as they had the corresponding contribution points, they could obtain a high-level cultivation technique. Bai said, you have not seen the great transformation of heaven and earth technique, so it is normal that you are not aware of the Oracle's sinister intentions in the Star Pavilion. Seeing as you have been following me for some time, I will kindly remind you that you had better abandon all the techniques that you have learned in the Star Pavilion, or you won't even know how you die. Hearing Bai's words, Ying's mouth twitched. Mr. Bai, if I abandon all the techniques of the Star Pavilion, then wouldn't I become a useless person? A large portion of Ying's current combat power came from the techniques and martial arts he had learned in the Star Pavilion. If he were to discard that power, his own combat power would decrease by more than half. You are not strong now, so it's still not too late for you to change. Of course, I am just giving you a suggestion. If you don't believe me, you can treat what I said as wind in the ears. Bai put the technique in his hand back on the bookshelf and said to Ying, you can just wait for me in the area on the first floor. I'll go and take a look at the upper floors. Ying, who was still thinking about what Bai had said, was not in the mood to think about the other floors of the Star Pavilion. He absent-mindedly bowed to Bai. I will wait for you here, Mr. Bai. For Ying, both the Oracle and Bai were supreme figures, and everything they said was very important. Now that Bai wanted Ying to abandon the Oracle's techniques, this was clearly a difficult choice for Ying. Bai did not interfere with Ying. He walked straight to a deserted corner and used Omni-World Insight to enter the second floor. Unlike the somewhat crowded first floor, both the number of people and the number of manuals on the second floor were much fewer. Each manual had its own display case for storage. Moreover, the Skywalkers who came to the second floor almost always took the manuals away with them. There were very few people who cultivated directly in the Star Pavilion. Among the Skywalker organization, the Skywalker members who could enter the second floor of the Star Pavilion could already be considered middle-level members. Either they were senior enough, or they had made great contributions, so they did not lack contribution points. Bai surveyed the environment on the second floor in the corner, and then set his sights on a Skywalker who was cultivating a technique on the second floor. He walked directly over and knocked the Skywalker unconscious, used Omni-World Insight to throw him into the grass outside the Star Pavilion, and then used the mask of the all-changing Star Lord to disguise himself as that Skywalker. After completing the disguise, Bayou walked swaggeringly to the display case where the manuals were placed and took out a manual to read. The contents of the manuals on the second floor of the Star Pavilion were already much more profound than the manuals on the first floor. However, correspondingly, the things that the Oracle had snuck in were also more and more subtle. After all, those who could come to the second floor of the Star Pavilion had some strength. If the Oracle made the methods of seizing a body too obvious, it would be easily discovered. As expected, the mid-level Skywalkers on the second floor of the Star Pavilion are just the Oracle's chickens. Bayou randomly flipped through a few cultivation manuals and, after discovering that they all contained the inner workings of the great transformation of heaven and earth technique, he turned his gaze to the third floor of the Star Pavilion. Above, only those with a numbered code among the Skywalkers can go. I wonder if the techniques they practice have also been tampered with. Bayou put the manual in his hand back in its place, and then, using the same method again, he quietly arrived at the third floor of the Star Pavilion by relying on his Omni-World Insight. On this third floor, the decor had completely changed. There were more than a dozen individual rooms. Each room stored a single manual, and there was a dedicated number outside the room. It seems that the Oracle has customized a unique technique for each person with a code name. Bayou surveyed the layout of the third floor and said to himself, there was no one on the third floor of the Star Pavilion now, and Bayou could not find anyone to imitate, so he simply did not disguise himself. He merely restrained his aura and swaggered out. Each individual room on the third floor was shrouded by an independent barrier, and a special key was needed to enter. Bayou observed the individual rooms in the hallway and finally stopped in front of the room inscribed with 13. The technique that 13 practices should be inside here. After making 13 into a puppet, I have not yet found anything abnormal in his technique. Now that I have this rare opportunity, it's just the right time to check 13's technique, Bayou said to himself, using Omni-World Insight to easily pass through the barrier outside the room and enter 13's room. The room was rather plain, with hardly any furniture or decorations. There was only a manual emitting purple light floating on the table. Bayou walked over and flipped through the manual. When he saw the contents inside, his eyes narrowed. So, 13 is practicing a castration version of the great transformation of heaven and earth technique. Although it doesn't look like there is anything wrong with this technique on the surface, many of the incantations and cultivation methods inside are copied from the great transformation of heaven and earth technique. Once the Oracle activates the great transformation of heaven and earth technique, the low-level members of the Skywalkers may survive because of their low cultivation and lack of importance by the Oracle. But those with numbered codes like 13 were essentially the Oracle's spare bodies. Since even 13's technique is like this, then the techniques in the other rooms should be similar. Everyone is just a chicken being raised by the Oracle. After successively wandering through the 3 floors of the Star Pavilion, Bayou had already realized that a large part of the reason why the Oracle created the Skywalker organization was probably to completely understand the great transformation of heaven and earth technique. As for the Skywalker organization and the members who joined the Skywalkers, they were nothing more than experience packs for the Oracle. I've already seen the situation on the 3 floors, and now, it's time for the 4th floor. Bayou put down 13's manual and looked up. The Star Pavilion had a total of 4 floors, and on the 4th floor, other than the Oracle, no more than 3 people in the entire Skywalker organization had the qualifications to enter. Even the Keeper of the Treasury did not have the qualifications to enter, and the barrier outside the 4th floor was personally set up by the Oracle. Its strength had already surpassed the barrier at the Treasury. This 4th floor is so heavily guarded. Could it be that the only copy of the great transformation of heaven and earth technique is above there? Chapter 359. The Onset of Chaos. After perceiving the strength of the barrier on the 4th level of the Star-Gazing Pavilion, and finding it far superior in both intensity and scale to those below the 3rd level, Bayou's interest in what lay above was piqued. Without hesitation, Bayou concealed his aura and used the All-Realm Insight to pass through the barrier, arriving on the 4th level of the Star-Gazing Pavilion. The instant Bayou entered the 4th level, he felt an incredibly powerful aura rush towards him. Have I been discovered? Sensing that powerful aura, Bayu's first reaction was that he had been detected. As he prepared for battle, he saw a bald man sitting cross-legged in midair at the center of the fourth level. The powerful aura Bayu had sensed was unintentionally emitted by the bald man's cultivation practice. Who is he? Seeing that he had not been discovered, Bayu quickly hid in the shadows, his eyes flashing with curiosity as he observed the bald man sitting in the void. This bald man's aura was already above that of the Treasury Guardian, and his power was even approaching that of the Oracle. Long Yao said, "Master, the cultivation technique he's practicing seems to be the original version of the Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao." The original version of the Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao? Bayu was taken aback. Long Yao explained, "That's right. Haven't I told you before that after this divine skill with the power of karma, the Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao, came into existence, it caused the death of countless powerhouses before finally falling into the hands of Tianli? And Tianli relied on the Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao to create the Heavenly Walker organization. The Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao was improved by Tianli. Even the version you, Master, are cultivating is vastly different from the original divine skill. But the bald man seems to be cultivating the most primitive Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao. Yet, his consciousness hasn't been devoured by it. Truly a miracle. The most primitive Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao? After hearing Long Yao's words, Bayu became intrigued by the bald man. Since resolving the flaws of the Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao, each time he cultivated his technique, he experienced tangible improvements without any bottlenecks. Obtaining the most primitive and complete version of the Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao would be a massive boost for Bayu. After determining the bald man's cultivation technique, Bayu first searched the fourth level of the star-gazing pavilion, finding that there was nothing there except the bald man. It seems the Oracle didn't leave a written copy of the technique here. Come to think of it, the Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao is the biggest secret of the Heavenly Walker organization. The Oracle only needs to keep it in his own mind. There is absolutely no need to keep it written down, which would risk leaking the secret. Bayu wasn't surprised not to find the Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao on the fourth level of the star-gazing pavilion. At this time, the cursed worm within Bayu proposed, "Master, why don't I place a partial curse on that bald man, making him verbally recite the cultivation technique?"
No.
Bayu shook his head slightly. That bald man's aura is not weak, and from his current state, he's very unstable. Suddenly placing a curse on him might cause him to lose control. Long Yao said, "Then, why don't we wake him up and beat him to a pulp, forcing him to hand over the cultivation technique?" Hearing Long Yao's suggestion, Bayu couldn't help but laugh. "Your method is even more unreliable than the cursed worm's." The cursed worm said, somewhat embarrassed, "Master, you're too kind. I don't think I'm any more outstanding than Sister Long Yao." "Do you really think I was complimenting you?" Bayu said speechlessly, letting out a sigh. "Forget it. I'll have to think of a way myself." Bayu released his soul power, quietly approaching the bald man, carefully sensing the flow of spiritual energy within him. Then, Bayu also sat cross-legged in the void and began to operate his own version of the Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao. Seeing Bayu suddenly start cultivating, the cursed worm couldn't help but ask Long Yao, "Sister Long Yao, what is Master doing?" "Hush. He probably wants to compare the differences in cultivation techniques between himself and the bald man and use that as a basis to improve his own version of the Great Transformation of the Heavenly Tao." Long Yao discerned Bayu's intention, immediately signaling for the cursed worm to stay quiet and not disturb him. "Oh!" The cursed worm shut his mouth. And so, the fourth level of the star-gazing pavilion became quiet. Bayu and the bald man faced each other in the distance, each cultivating their own techniques, yet subtly connected. At the same time, on the first level of the star-gazing pavilion, after struggling with his decision, Ewing finally decided to believe Bayu and found a place to abolish his own cultivation. As someone who had left the primordial chaos with Bayu and ventured through the void, Ying had witnessed Bai Yu's growth from a level of a monitor 7-pillar expert to a great power capable of confronting the oracle. Such rapid progress in such a short time was enough to prove that Bai Yu was no ordinary person. Ying's current act of abolishing his martial arts represented his wholehearted choice to stand by Bai Yu's side. As such, while other Heavenly Walker members were diligently practicing the techniques within the star-gazing pavilion, Ying was the first person to abolish his cultivation, his abruptly falling aura clashing with the surroundings. However, Ying's cultivation level was not high, and with his cultivation currently declining, no one paid him much attention. His actions did not cause any waves in the star-gazing pavilion. Even those who noticed Ying's state while resting only thought that Ying had gone into cultivation madness. After a quiet laugh at how foolish he was, they continued with their own cultivation. The star-gazing pavilion was as calm as ever. However, outside the star-gazing pavilion, in the quarry and the treasury, a storm was brewing. In the quarry, a large number of slaves had accepted Bai Yu's incantation. After enduring extreme pain, they had finally obtained powerful strength and broken free from their cages. And as the first to respond to Bai Yu and gain power, Ichi naturally became the new leader of the slaves, starting to plan their escape from the quarry and to declare war against the Heavenly Walkers. On the other side, news of the treasury being robbed and the treasury guardian going berserk had spread, causing the entire Heavenly Walker organization to shake. A large number of Heavenly Walker members were rushing towards the treasury, intending to subdue the guardian. The treasury guardian, with no way out, was well aware that the oracle would never forgive him for losing all the treasures in the treasury and that he was facing certain death. The treasury guardian had become desperate. He was trying to carve a bloody path out of Heavenly Peak before the oracle arrived, escaping into the void. Facing the many encirclements, the treasury guardian revealed his true power before the Heavenly Walker members. Even with the combined forces of the 9 generals and other code-level experts, they could not stop the treasury guardian. On the contrary, several code-level experts were killed by the guardian, alarming hidden experts on Heavenly Peak. Heavenly Peak was already in chaos, with a trend of war breaking out. However, even as Heavenly Peak had fallen into chaos, the oracle who resided at the top of Heavenly Peak had yet to make an appearance. It was as if he was brewing something. An unprecedented storm was about to descend. Chapter 360. The Blindfolded Woman. At the peak of Heavenly Peak, a huge palace was suspended in the sky. This was the forbidden land of the Heavenly Walkers and the oracle's sleeping quarters. For many years, no Heavenly Walker had ever set foot here. However, at this moment, a woman with a great figure, but whose eyes were covered by a strip of cloth, was walking briskly through the empty hall. She eventually stopped at the very center of the hall, kneeling on one knee towards the empty throne, respectfully saying, "Lord Tianli, a riot has broken out on Heavenly Peak. Slaves from various realms have escaped from the quarry. Also, the treasury has been robbed and the treasury guardian, Xiaoying, has engaged in a battle with the Heavenly Walker members. 4 code-level experts have already been killed." The blindfolded woman said calmly, just like a cold machine, as if the events that had occurred on Heavenly Peak had nothing to do with her. As her voice fell, the oracle's voice came from the empty throne. "I am already aware of these things. Everything is under my control. Go and instruct the other 4 walkers that they are not allowed to go out and interfere with the events on Heavenly Peak until I issue an order."
Yes.
The blindfolded woman slightly bowed to the throne and then asked, "Ying has brought the Monitor 7-pillar, Bai Yu, into Heavenly Peak for quite some time now. Ying is currently abolishing his cultivation in the star-gazing pavilion, but Bai Yu is nowhere to be seen. What should we do about this matter?" "Ying is abolishing his cultivation?" There was a slight change in the oracle's tone. The blindfolded woman nodded. "Yes. This subordinate suspects that Bai Yu has discovered Lord Tianli's plan and had Ying abolish his cultivation to break free of your control." The oracle pondered for a moment, then said, "It's no harm for a few people to know my plan. It seems Bai Yu isn't a simple character. Keep a close eye on Ying. If you discover any traces of Bai Yu, remember not to confront him head-on. I cannot see through him right now and need some time for further deduction." "Yes, this subordinate will take her leave." The blindfolded woman once again bowed to the oracle before standing up and slowly disappearing from the hall. And as the blindfolded woman left, the empty hall once again fell into silence, as if no one had ever been there. Stargazing Pavilion, 4th level. Bayu's soul power continued to envelop the bald man. By observing the flow of spiritual energy within the bald man, he was slowly analyzing the characteristics of the bald man's cultivation of the great transformation of the heavenly Tao. Although Bayu also possessed the great transformation of the heavenly Tao, when he compared the energy flow paths of his technique to those of the bald man, he discovered that they were completely different. Judging solely from the energy flow paths, Bayu's great transformation of the heavenly Tao and the bald man's technique could be regarded as two completely different techniques. Bayu found it difficult to imagine how the oracle, Tianli, could modify a karma-based divine technique so drastically and still retain the effects of the great transformation of the heavenly Tao. Based solely on this point, the oracle was undoubtedly a genius. Bayu now wanted to rely on the bald man's energy flow paths to reverse engineer the complete great transformation of the heavenly Tao without any incantations, based on his own version of the technique. While not entirely impossible, the difficulty was comparable to the oracle's modification of the great transformation of the heavenly Tao. The probability of success was minimal. Seeing Bayu staying still for a long time, the cursed worm couldn't help but ask Long Yao, "Sister Long Yao, when do you think Master will be able to reverse engineer the complete great transformation of the heavenly Tao?" "That's hard to say." Long Yao shook her head. The great transformation of the heavenly Tao is an extremely rare karma-based divine skill that cannot be deduced using normal logic. Furthermore, the technique mastered by Master is too different from the technique of that bald man. Frankly, Master's chances of successfully reverse engineering the complete great transformation of the heavenly Tao are almost zero. So difficult? The cursed worm was shocked by Long Yao's words. "We are in the headquarters of the heavenly walkers right now, and it's chaotic outside. We don't know when the oracle will appear. What if the oracle comes?" Long Yao said, "You don't have to worry about that. My strength is similar to Master's. Even if Tianli came now, I can take care of you." The cursed worm said, "Of course, I believe in your strength, Sister Long Yao. But if the oracle comes, wouldn't that prevent Master from reverse engineering the complete great transformation of the heavenly Tao?" "That is a problem," Long Yao pondered for a moment. Just as she was wondering whether she should personally suppress Tianli when he appeared, she suddenly realized a powerful figure was appearing around the star-gazing pavilion. Her expression shifted slightly, and she exclaimed in surprise, "Have we been exposed?" Hearing Long Yao's words, the cursed worm was taken aback and hurriedly asked, "Sister Long Yao, what has been exposed?" "Hush, don't disturb Master's cultivation. Come with me to take a look." Long Yao signaled the cursed worm to stay on guard, and then she left Bayu's body, using the barrier opened by Bayu's all-realm insight, left the star-gazing pavilion, and arrived on the roof outside. Standing on the roof with the cursed worm, Long Yao followed the direction of the aura she had sensed, and saw a faint white mist floating in the air not far from the star-gazing pavilion. If one wasn't paying close attention, it would be difficult to notice. "Hidden in the mist, are you? I want to see who you are." Long Yao stared at the white mist, her eyes flashing golden light, and then a blindfolded woman appeared in her vision. The cursed worm, who could only barely see a ball of mist, asked Long Yao, "Sister Long Yao, what do you see? Have we been exposed?" Long Yao said, "A blindfolded woman. Her strength is a bit stronger than the treasury guardian, but she doesn't seem to have discovered us. Instead, she's here to keep an eye on you, Ying." The cursed worm said, "Then it was a false alarm. Shall we go back?"
"No."
Long Yao shook her head. Yu Ying is just an ordinary member of the heavenly walkers. He wouldn't attract the attention of someone like the blindfolded woman. Someone must be trying to find Master through Yu Ying. Master is currently at the crucial moment of reverse engineering the great transformation of the heavenly Tao, which may cause a big commotion. If that woman keeps an eye on the star-gazing pavilion, Master might be exposed and fail. The cursed worm asked, "Then shall we kill that woman now?" "You idiot! Long Yao rolled her eyes at the cursed worm. Wouldn't doing so just be a transparent cover-up and tell them that Master is here at the star-gazing pavilion? That bald man must be an important figure for Tianli. If Tianli knows that Master has broken through the barrier and arrived on the 4th level of the star-gazing pavilion, he will absolutely come and ruin everything. The cursed worm scratched his head. This won't do, that won't do. Sister Long Yao, what should we do now? Let me think. Long Yao pondered for a moment, then an idea flashed in her mind. She said to the cursed worm, I've got it. Go to Master and bring me the faceless Lord's mask.